folks, welcome back to Pirkei Avos Live with Rabbi Chaim Coffman, the Ethics of the Fathers. It's such a wonderful course, wonderful class. Always a joy to learn, always a joy to be with the Rabbi. It's been 6 long weeks since I think our last broadcast for sure, and I missed Rabbi Coffman specifically, and it's just a joy to be back. So we kind of put together a new look, try to amp up the show a little bit because we know he's always amping up the Torah to study hard to share with us the truth of the matter. So let's just jump right in. Say hello to the Rabbi. It's been 6 weeks. Rabbi Coffman, you're live on the air. It's your show, sir.
It's great to be back. It's kind of like, you have a fast day. Normally they say before a fast day, if you drink too much coffee, right, you have to stop. If I drank too much coffee or any coffee, I'd probably kill people, right? But in general, so it's like, we haven't been together for 6 weeks. It's been unbelievable, withdrawal. My kids are saying, "Hey, how come you haven't said, hey, folks?" They're like, what's going on? So I said, listen, we're on sabbatical for a little bit. We're on a little bit of a, break to after the holidays. We're right into Sukkot. It's the second day, starting the second day of Sukkot for everyone, outside of Israel. It's only one day in Israel. So any Jew out there, that's watching now shouldn't be watching, because for you it's a festival. For me it's sort of every day. It's called Chol HaMoed, which is Chol means every day, Moed means the festival. So it's sort of, we dress up in Shabbos clothes every day. So it's, you have to have festive meals, etc. But a person can work, a person can write, if they're afraid they're going to forget something, or other things. So, we are in the most amount of intermediate days during the holiday for Sukkot or for Passover that we can have, but we're in lockdown, so no one's really going too many places. So I tell my kids, time to go out to the porch. They said, hey, the porch is a sukkah, so what are we gonna do the rest of the day? So I gotta find some good kosher entertainment for them. But I digress. Again, it's a pleasure, definitely a pleasure to be back. We gonna start the second chapter, first Mishna, and I can almost guarantee we're not going to get that very far, because we're going to see why in a second. So the Mishnah says in the name of Rabbi, right? Rabbi, known as Rabbi Yehuda Nossi. Rabbi Yehuda Nossi, known as Judah the Prince. He's the one that organized. He's the one who organized all the Mishnah, put them together. And Rabbi said, so what did he say? He said, which is the proper path a man should choose for himself? Whatever is a credit to himself earns him the esteem of fellow men. Be scrupulous in performing a minor mitzvah is a major one. You don't know the reward given for the respective mitzvahs. And whatever, there's a lot to speak about that. Calculate the cost of a mitzvah against its reward, the reward of a sin against its cost. Consider 3 things you'll never come to the grip of sin. Know what is above you, i.e. a watchful eye.
Oh. We seem to have lost. Rabbi's frozen. We were on for about 15 minutes before class, folks, and we actually he had a bit of a freeze there. So let's just give him a minute to hook back up. And I don't know if it's the internet connection outside of Israel or outside of Jerusalem. Once you get outside the big city, you're dealing with lower bandwidth. But it's always a joy to share Torah coming from the nation of Israel. And the Ethics of the Fathers is just one of these most important classes, Why don't I take a moment and see if I can pull it up? Let's go here. 1 second. And we'll pull it up. I know that we had such a time with chapter 1. I think we did nearly 40 weeks to get through chapter 1. And all I can say is it is just one of those. The ethics is deep. It's deep. It's something that takes forever to get through, to grasp and understand exactly what the fathers have passed on, and to hear talks that come from tidbits from generation to generation to generation. And I spent a lot of time studying this stuff about 15 years ago, just dove right into it. But chapter 2, reads, let me just read it to you, Rabbi. Oh, we got the Rabbi dialing back in, so let's just break right in. Rabbi, have we got you again? Yes, we do. Let's just jump back in. Rabbi, I was just pulling up Pirkei Avos myself. I was going to start reading the Mishna to them, but I can't explain it like you do. It's been passed on to the Hebrew people for generations, and I just pointed that out. And please, yes, continue, sir.
All right, sorry about that. Hopefully I'll have keep the signal going strong here. So we said at the end of the Mishnah, it says, know what is above you, a watchful eye and attentive ear, all your deeds are recorded. They're recorded in a book. So I mentioned that if we take stock of what we do on a daily basis before we go to sleep, then if we'd write down, how did I pray? How did I act? How did I interact with others? How did I make blessings? How, fill in the blank of all the things that we do during the day, right? So then we can understand where we're really holding in the world, because there are two angels that follow us around every day. They follow us around to record, right? Just like we're recording now. They record everything that we do. So according to Kabbalah, when somebody dies, or if they have an out-of-body experience, what's the first thing they see? First thing they see, the fact that the soul hovers over the body. And what happens is they see their life flash before their eyes, right? So everybody, Jew or non-Jew, anyone who's ever had an out-of-body experience, they all say the same thing, right? They see their life flash before their eyes, right? It goes very quickly, but every last thing that you did, right? So therefore, we understand, again, we don't distinguish between Jews or non-Jews, right? So therefore, what? So therefore, we understand that everything is being recorded, right? The soul is going to remember, or if it doesn't remember, we'll find out later, right? After 120 years, God's going to show, this is what you did, right? And you're going to have to answer, right? And at the end of the day, we may have excuses. God may say, okay, I'll give you a pass on this. But in the end, a person's never going to be able to say, I did not do this. Yeah. That you're not going to be able to make the claim. Maybe you said, I meant this, I meant that, I really didn't, even if I did it, I had ulterior motives, whatever, there are other things going on, you got to cut me some slack, and what can God say? God can say yay, or God can say nay. He can say one way or the other. So if he gives you a free pass on certain things, okay. If he doesn't give you a free pass, you're out, right? He's going to judge you. It's going to be negative, right? 100% is going to be negative. So even if we forget, right, one of the things we pray on Yom Kippur is, you, God, don't forget. You don't forget what we've done. So how can you repent on something you didn't know you did? Very hard. It's impossible. If you did something in a crummy way, you made a blessing, you made the right blessing, but you didn't do it the optimal way. Forget about Kabbalah. You didn't do it the optimal way. You get credit, right? In my language, you get a C minus. Right, kind of like the CFL, a C minus. You got a C minus in making a blessing, or a C minus in prayer, but you pass. But you get a pass. So when you create an angel for the action that you've done, so the angel will be, in my language, kind of wimpy, right? He'll be a white angel, but maybe he's missing an ear. Maybe his nose is smashed. Maybe his leg is amputated. From the knee down, or whatever the case is.
Not whole.
So however a person does the action, right, that's the credit, that's the merit, that they're going to get. So God doesn't forget. So when we come to Yom Kippur, that's why a person needs to take stock of what they do during the day, right? Every day. And therefore, you're going to know, obviously, there's many things we know we have to fix, right? That there's no question. But obviously, if a person would take stock on a daily basis, on a regular basis, you know what the score is. And if you know what the score is, you wouldn't wake up. You're down like 50,000 to 1, right? You know what the score is, and the fact that God has mercy is a miracle. That repentance, again, not to get into Yom Kippur too much, right? But repentance is a miracle. Why? Because in humanistic terms, if a person does something against someone else, what happens? Usually, even if they apologize, that relationship is never the same. It's usually never the same, right? Whether in business, other things, you spoke badly against them, whatever it is. So imagine we do that to the creator of the world, right? A number of times we say on Yom Kippur, I have sinned, I have rebelled. Now, even if you do a sin, you weren't careful with this, that, you end up, it's called a rebellion, right? It is a rebellion. You spit in God's face. Don't you know he's in charge of nature? Don't you know he runs the world? Don't you know he does all these things? He gives you air, he gives you water, right? He gives you all these things. So how could you rebel? So you feel like an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust. So what happens? You do one thing, okay, you can push it off. Right? You do a second thing, okay, I can look the other way. Third thing, fourth thing, fifth thing. Imagine's got somebody, got family, others that put you down on a regular basis. Let's say. First comment, you're not going to come out, guns shooting. Second comment, okay, it's going to irritate you a little bit. Fine, you let it pass. Third comment, fourth comment, fifth comment, you're already ready to do something. Now that's in human terms. Comes along God himself and he says, you know what, if you repent as a Jew, you not only uproot what you've done, you're closer to me. You're closer to me than you ever have been. What are you talking about? When a person sins, you take 3 steps backward. If I take 3 steps backwards, means I have to take at least 3 steps forward to see where I was before. Right? So imagine, okay, I did a few mitzvahs.
Uh-oh, looks like Rabbi froze again. He's having difficulty with the internet today. He'll be back, folks, all I can tell you. Let's give him a minute, and we'll be back with him in just a second. I love how he's explaining about the deeds that you do and the way it creates things in this world. You need to understand that there's some ethics behind this, and the ethics have to do with the repercussion of your actions. And how it begins to affect and influence the rest of the world, the community at large, your life. I love how he just said you take 3 steps backwards when you do something you deliberately know you shouldn't be doing, and you need to take 3 steps forward just to be in the same position. And life can beat you down this way. It beats you down in the sense that we're not perfect, especially us who are of the 70 nations. We're not perfect people. We make errors. We make errors not even knowing, and we bring a lot of drama upon our own lives, a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties, and we ask ourselves why. And I know that the B'nai Noach that I have met, they truly love to cleave to Hashem, which means to get closer to Hashem, which means to understand and behold the order with which he puts together the world in the whole universe, and to grip and grasp it and then begin to walk in it. That's really walking with Hashem when you're making those forward steps. But if you happen to make an error, something you don't know is an error, and you're going through difficulties in life, you must understand that nothing happens for a reason, and Hashem is never out of control. He controls each and every variable of all existence over all time, all at once. He knows it all, right? He's Hashem. But for us in our daily lives, as we flow through this ebb and flow of time in our communities, in our daily routines with our families, in our workplaces, and just our community at large, our behavior matters, and that's really what a lot of the Pirkei Avos teaches about the ethics of the fathers, is bringing down to us the light of Torah. We got the Rabbi back, so let's just click back in and see how he's doing. And Rabbi, we got you back. Oh, we missed you. I tried to keep the crowd, and it's just, I'm sorry about the weak connection. But you were on a roll. I don't know
what the issue was on my end. I mean, I've had a few issues here and there, but the last 6 months been really, hasn't last few months.
It's not Coffman proof.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's not. And then, in any case, what a person does, right? Get back to where we were. What a person does, and the actions we do, we rebel, right? Essentially, it's a rebellion against God. So the fact that God allows us to tap in and that God allows us to draw close, the reality is he could zap us. He could zap us at any time. Why? Because you rebelled against the creator of the world. You know better, right? If you know better, right? If you know better, how could you do it? How could you go against him? How could you do what he said not to do? So the fact that he says you are closer than you've ever been, I uproot the negative things that you've done and actually give you a mitzvah over here. It's like you never did it. Now, an Anju also has repentance, right? An Anju we see by Nineveh, the book of Jonah, right? You see by Cain, right? You see by others that by non-Jews there is this idea of repentance, but it doesn't work the same. Why doesn't it work the same? It stops them from being punished, but doesn't uproot 100% what they've done. Now, that's obvious because they don't have the same soul makeup. They're different. Their obligations are different, right, etc. But when things are being recorded, you're going to be judged according to where you were holding, not what your future, right? It's not about future. It's about where you're holding right now. Wow. So therefore, God doesn't forget. But how could we forget? Because the reality is the Rambam says you blow the shofar. You blow the shofar every day except on Shabbos in the month of Elul. Why do you blow the shofar? It's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call because now I have to take things more seriously. So what happened during the rest of the year? So the Rambam says the rest of the year you're asleep. You're asleep. This has to wake you up. All right? You're obligated to wake up specifically during this time. But you have to wake up during the rest of the year also. Right? We're not giving you a free pass because you were asleep, obviously, but we forget. Right? We definitely forget what we've done. God doesn't. And if we really understood what our obligation is, what we should be doing, you'd never get out of bed. All right? We're gonna speak more. Just sort of way of introduction. We'll speak more about that. So let's get to the beginning of the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, according to Rabbi, what's the proper path a man should choose? Right? Whatever's credit to himself earns the esteem of fellow man. Now, what does it mean, earning the esteem over here? It means that when it comes to all character traits, what's the character trait a person should choose? Person should choose, the Rambam says, you choose the middle path. You don't veer either too far to the right or too far to the left. Right? Because if you veer too far to the left, that's called being a Democrat. We know what the Democrats are all about. You go too far to the left, it's over. Right? Liberalism, everything goes. Relative morality is relative. You get all these different things. It's chaos. Right? Because anything goes. If you go too far to the right is also bad. Right? So it says the Rambam, you need to find a middle path. Now, it could mean over here, let's say a person amasses a ton of money. Person's got a lot of money, but people don't respect them. Because he gives a lot to, let's say he gives a lot to charity. So if he helps other people, people will respect him. Right? It'll give him great esteem. But if a person, what's the obligation? 10%. 10% after taxes a Jew has to give. A non-Jew should give charity. They don't have to give 10%. Right? But they should also give charity. I would say it's a moral imperative. But giving more than 20% is forbidden. Why? Because if a person didn't want to give more than 20%, what are we worried? It could lead to poverty. Right? In other words, a person gives away too much, you don't have enough. You don't have enough to live on. Right? So therefore, you're only allowed to give a certain amount. Well, let's backtrack. Let's backtrack here. So the Mishna's telling me, okay, I'm going to earn the esteem of my fellow men. Well, couldn't I tick people off if, I have a lot of money, I give to charity, people are jealous, let's say, so.
It makes them look bad.
Right. Not only that, but if a person amasses a lot of money, there are a lot of people out there, athletes, actors, whatever, have a lot of money, and people don't respect them. Why? Because of how they live their lives. Right? So they can say, who cares how I live my life? I do this, I do that. They, obviously, people want to demand respect because they know how to shoot a basketball. They know how to hit a baseball. They know how to act. They know how to, they know how to do all these things. Right? But what happens? Person has money. What does money lead to? Power. Right? If someone doesn't have a lot of money, they're not going to listen to what they have to say. Right? They're not in an influential position. Nobody cares what you have to say because you don't have money. And someone who does have money, let's say they have a lot of money, who cares what they have to say? Do I really care? Someone's got a ton of money, he's a famous actor. Do I really care what he thinks about Torah mitzvahs? Am I even going to give him the time of day? Right? As an actor, I'm not going to mention him by name, right? That, came out and said all kinds of things against Judaism. It's like, come on, it's like beneath me to believe in religion, believe that the Torah is true, whatever. That's the whole diatribe. Right? So this was months ago. So I sort of got a chuckle because this guy can't even read Aleph Beis, right? He can't read from a prayer book. He wouldn't know which way to hold it. I should take what he says seriously because he's a director, because he's an actor, he's a self-hating Jew. Why should I take what he says seriously? Right? People say, oh, you Orthodox, this, that, and they throw all kinds of things at us because they're a bunch of leftists. And their opinion is more important than anything else. They won't give you an opinion. And if you say anything against them, it's bad news. Right? So where's the respect? There is no respect. Oh, religion? Come on, you're closed-minded. Come on, you're this. Come on, you're that. You're causing the virus. You're spreading the virus. Well, isn't that anti-Semitism? Because people
for sure.
People don't understand what the reality is. Right? It's true. We live all clustered together, Orthodox Jews. That is very true. One person on top of the other, 100%. So there's reason why it should spread quicker. So if they don't wear masks, it's their fault. I agree. And a lot of people don't wear masks on both sides, right? But I don't even want to get into that. So here, a person can have a lot of money. They don't respect them. And let's say he gives a lot to charity. Now let's speak about charity, right? Giving money to charity means it's got to be legitimate. If a Jew gives, tons of money to save the whales, when he could have helped other Jews, is he going to say, what? Can't help any other person? Can't help any non-Jews? Well, don't we say, Chesed, the acts of loving kindness start at home? Right? Well, there are billions of non-Jews. So let the non-Jews raise money for their causes. I'm not saying Jews can't necessarily give to them, but Jews are intertwined. Right? Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh. All Jews are intertwined. So therefore, there's collective punishment as well. If we don't do what we're supposed to do, whether they're religious or not religious, right? So all the Jewish people are, get punished. Hitler, Yamach Shemoy V'zichro, may his name be blotted out, may he rot. What? He didn't care if your mother wasn't Jewish or not. If you had Jewish blood, you're dead. Right? That's it. So secular Jews couldn't understand why he's taking secular Jews. Take the religious Jews. They're different. They don't eat your food. They don't go to your gymnasium. They don't go to your schools. They're separate. So the self-hating Jews say, take them. Why are you taking us? We're like you. We fought in your wars. We went to universities. We played in your sports. We did all these things. So they couldn't understand that. So they'll help everyone else except their own. So I had a relative, very wealthy relative, that passed on, and another relative had told me that the person gave unbelievable amounts to charity, and they helped raise more than $100 million. If any of my family is watching this, they're gonna carve me up like no tomorrow. But it doesn't matter. Truth is truth, and that is they helped raise not their own money, but they had other people, and they helped raise more than $100 million. $100 million for a non-Jewish charity. Now, I'm not going to say this non-Jewish charity, is not a legit charity. I'm definitely not going to say that, right? The question is, she'll probably get credit, for giving, a certain amount to charity. But what about all the yeshivas? What about all the girls' schools, that always need help? What about helping people marry off their kids, right? What about needy brides, right? What happened to all that? So imagine there was a lot of people at this funeral. And this person was getting praised like no tomorrow for all these charitable acts. Now, imagine the soul is a pure soul now, understands what the truth is. She's getting killed, again and again and again. Because God's going to say, I gave you $100 million. You raised $100 million. You didn't think to give to your own? So you're going to say, come on, that's elitist. That's like saying, the chosen people, and we're elitists. We're better than everyone. Being chosen doesn't mean better. Being chosen means I have a greater obligation. I got many more mitzvahs to do, right? If a Noahide goes outside and does something wrong, you think people are going to chastise him because he's a Noahide? Never. Never. A Jew, whether he's secular or religious, cuts someone off, they're going to make some epithet. Why? Because they're Jewish. It doesn't make sense otherwise. An Italian does something wrong and say, burn down Italy. You're going to say, a Chinese person does something wrong, whatever it is, you're going to say, burn down China. Well, maybe some people will, right? But in the end, that'd be called being racist. So if a Jew does something wrong, the entire Jewish nation gets nailed, right? It doesn't go that way with other groups. I'm not saying that racism doesn't exist. It definitely still, unfortunately still exists. But nobody's got collectively wasted like the Jewish people. And in so many different facets, right? So over here, giving charity means, the Rambam says it's better to give a little to a lot of people than give one shot, right? So if you had $100, give 20 here, 20 there, 10 here, 5 there, then rather than give 100 one shot, right? So it teaches the person how to give, right? But if a person has a lot more money, so he has to give more. But the problem is, the more money you have, we're going to see one day, probably in the next millennium, we'll get there, that says, Marbe Nechasim, Marbe Daiga. The more a property a person has, the more he's worried about how he's going to keep it. And if he has 100, he wants 200. If he has 200, he wants 400. So the more a person has, the more he's going to want to keep it to himself. But doesn't the Torah say you have to give charity, right? You have to give a tenth. But what does the person want to do? They'll say, this needy person, let him get a better job. Let him work harder. Let him go into property management where he can make millions, where he can make tons of money, right? So you're going to say, let him work hard. I earned what I did. There's only one problem. They take God out of the picture, right? So over here, a lot of money, a lot of people, we mentioned, they amass a lot of money, but people don't respect them. They don't respect them because they feel they have the upper hand. Look what I'm doing. I'm helping you with this. I'm giving. They forget where it comes from, right? So a person has to give charity properly. When he gives charity properly, then people have more respect, right? But at the same time, says the Rambam, what happens if you give charity? You just had 10 people at your door. People know you're very generous. 10 people came at your door, right? One, another, giving out check after check. What happens? You get fed up because, you want to have a life. People keep knocking on the door. So what happens? You give money with a sour face. You give money with a sour face, you can write a check for $10 million. What's the reward? 0. Why do you get 0? Because you gave it with a sour face. Right? That you're not allowed. That's obviously you're not allowed to do. Right? So I've been on both sides. I've had money, haven't had money. Definitely been on both sides.
Oh,
now,
I read your story. Yeah.
If someone has the ability to have, right? If they have, and God has blessed them, help other people. Because there's no guarantee you're going to keep it, right? It's not for you to keep; it's to help others, right? That's that's one of the reasons it's given. It's a test. Wealth is a test. Not many people pass it, right? I heard brought down the name of the Maharal, that the Maharal of Prague, more than 150 years ago, 200 years ago, said 1 in 1,000 rich people go to Gan Eden, go to paradise. Why? Because they don't help others. They're given a gift. They don't help others because they think the gift came from themselves. I worked hard. The Torah tells me by the work of my own hands. I'm the one who did all this. So I had a fellow Jew once tell me, I became who I am despite my parents. Now I understood what the person meant. Right? Maybe didn't have the greatest parents, whatever the case is. But the person's claiming I am who I am despite them. Okay. Right, I do understand people can be abusive, other things, but I said, well, you still, the Torah says you have an obligation to honor them, to respect them. Why? Because they brought you into the world. I said, so basically you're telling me that you did everything yourself. I said, you want to hold by that. You want to stand by what you said. Yes. I said, okay. I said, you gave birth to yourself. You pulled yourself out of the womb. You changed your own diapers when you were younger. You drove your own car. You had your own money, right? You had your own food. You had all these things. Don't help you out. They're like, you're missing the whole point. I'm like, no, I understood the point. And the point is you're an ingrate. Because without them, you wouldn't be in this world. Without them, you wouldn't be anything. You want to be like one of these kids left in a trash can? Underage woman gives birth or whatever the case is, put the kid in the trash can, leave him to die. That's the alternative. You got to be thankful for what you have. People grow up in messed up families. I've spoken a lot about this. Physical abuse, psychological abuse, across the board. Nobody has it easy. Some more, some less. Some don't have that at all, thank God. Whatever it is. But at the end of the day, difference of opinion between the Rambam and others, whether there's an obligation of a parent to abusive, whether I have to honor them. Right? Honor them means they walk in a room, I have to stand up. Honor them means I can't sit in their seat without permission. Respect means I can't interrupt when they are speaking. I can't contradict them. In other words, if they say something blasphemes against Torah, you can't jump up and say, you're wrong. That's disrespectful. What are you allowed to say? You're allowed to say, I think the Bible, the Torah says like this. Now, if you explain it like that, they're going to understand what they said is wrong. But you're not there saying, you moron. Don't you know anything? Don't you know Aleph Beis is what it says? Right? But you can't do that.
Maladaptive.
That's disrespectful. Right? Even if the parent is abusive, doesn't mean I have to hang out with them all the time. Right? Doesn't mean I don't have to guard myself against them. But I can't belittle them. Right? I cannot put them down. I can't embarrass them. Can't embarrass any person in public anyway. You lose your portion of the world to come. All the more so a parent. So again, even if parents do things they shouldn't do, right? They may be abusive psychologically, whatever the case is. I understand. It's a terrible thing. So what? So even if they do that, what gives you the right to demolish them? One of the, I got this question in my Q&A the other day, last week, and someone had asked, a sibling was putting down their parents. They weren't cursing them, but whatever, they're yelling at them, putting them down, and they stood up for the parents. And the parents stopped them. And the parents said, this isn't your thing, get out. I don't want you to defend me. So the person asked, did I do the right thing? They did the right thing or the wrong thing. So there's a little bit of a touchy topic. All right, but if the parents are there, they can defend themselves. Why do you have to get involved? Now, what your sibling is doing is wrong, right? Yelling and screaming and whatever, putting them down, maybe calling them names, whatever it is. Having this whole argument, you have to show respect. Now, does that mean I have to stop the argument? Not necessarily, right? If the parent can't defend themselves, one thing. If the parents are there, let them answer. Why do you have to get involved? In general. So many, many years ago, that was before I had teenagers, Teenagers, different creation in and of themselves. So anyone who has teenagers understands, and I had 4 at one time. So you can only imagine what's going on in my house. So in general, and imagine me as the father, so good luck to them. So in general, there was I was somewhere, and this teenager spoke up against the mother. So I asked the mother, I was sitting right there, right? There were other people there. It wasn't like it was somewhere in private. This person, said something in private. So what happened? So I asked the mother, I said, you going to take that? Oh, God, don't worry about it. It's how teenagers talk. This happened more than 20 years ago. Now, even if that would be the case, why is that not respectful? Why is that not disrespectful? I see what goes on in Israel, secular kids, and how they speak to their parents and all that. It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. Right? They're no different than in the secular world. Right? What goes on in the secular world. Jews, non-Jews doesn't, we're not gonna discriminate over here. Right? But in the end, the person has to know when to get involved, when not. If someone can answer, if someone is there, let them defend themselves. You don't necessarily have to defend them. right? You may think you're honoring them by defending them, but what that does is it just makes the argument stronger, right? I had someone once tell me my parents this, my parents that, my parents the other thing. I said, okay, I think you need to see a shrink. I think you need to get over it. You know, parents, okay, maybe they didn't do the right things here, there, you know, and other things, right? So, you know, blaspheming them, blasting them, what does that do? You know, that doesn't do anything. You know, certainly not. And, you know, at a certain level, you have to show respect, right? Honor, maybe you don't have to. Respect is something everybody knows. Everybody understands, right? The only question is if the parent is really abusive. If the parent is physically or mentally abusive, it could be respect goes out the window to a certain extent. Honor for sure. Right? Honor, there's nothing to talk about. I shouldn't say for sure. There's a difference of opinion. Right? But one opinion is you don't have to honor them. Respect, everyone should agree there has to be some level of respect. You can't contradict, you can't make fun of them, you can't curse them, you know, etc. And honor and dealing with parents and honoring them, respecting them is one of the hardest mitzvahs to do.
Really?
Rabbi Yochanan had 10 kids that died in his lifetime. I think it was right. Sure, he had 10 kids that died in his lifetime, and one of the things he didn't want to see was the birth pain, the coming of the Messiah, because he didn't think he was going to handle it. And I think he mentioned, or he or one of the rabbis, I don't remember 100%, that said that his mother died in childbirth and his father died shortly thereafter, and he grew up without parents. So this rabbi said, it's better I grew up without parents, because if I had parents, how would I fulfill my obligation? How would I fulfill my obligation to honor them, respect them? It's almost an impossible mitzvah. Almost. It's very, very hard. You know, even if they, you know, there's a story the Talmud brings out where the rabbi's mother's like, you know, spit at him, you know, took his money wallet, threw it in the river, and he had to sit there and take it. He had to sit there and take it because it's his mother. Okay, she, you know, might have had a few screws loose or, you know, whatever the case is, but, you know, at the end of the day, still can't speak against her, still can't, you know, you can't smack her around, obviously, you know, God forbid. You know, you have to show a certain level of respect, even if they're not there, right? Even if, let's say, their mind isn't there. It's a very, you know, it's a very hard thing. It's a very hard thing, and most likely we don't do, you know, a fifth, a fourth, a third. We're not even, you know, come close to really the honor that parents, you know, that parents deserve. But okay, you know, we still have an obligation. Still one of the 10 Commandments, right? You know, we still have an obligation. You know, so, you know, back to charity. So if a person gives charity, charity properly, people are going to have more respect. As long as they're not ostentatious, as long as they're not showing off, so to speak, they're giving, they're helping, they're doing their utmost in what they can do to help others. Others could be jealous, right? Others can say, wow, got a, you know, a nicer house, a nicer car, but, you know, they could be jealous. The person has to be careful. The person has money. You do not in any way, shape, or form want to flaunt. That's part of what the evil eye is. The evil eye, what it means is that somebody looks at something you do. Right? Let's say, you know, a person's got great kids, got a great spouse, you know, and let's say they're building on their house. Right? They're not being ostentatious, but whatever they're building on. Now, let's say for argument's sake, you don't have the money, or the way your house or apartment is situated, you can't add on, or whatever the case is, and you feel bad. You yourself feel bad. So now what happens? You're feeling bad. Now, this person's not necessarily doing anything wrong by building onto his house. But the problem is that he feels bad. This person feels bad. So what happens? That goes all the way up to heaven. And God says, wow, this person's in sorrow, this person's in pain. He says, I got to check out what's going on. And then he opens the other person's file. Now, the only time you ever want your file open, if God's going to judge you, is on Rosh Hashanah. That's it. You do not want God opening your file any other time. Because what's going to happen? God's going to say, oh, this person's giving charity. He's building his house. He's adding to his house. This other person feels bad. Let's check out to see what this person's doing. Let's go down and see, is this person doing what he should be in other aspects of his life? Now, the question is, the pain that the other person feels, God's got a soft spot, right? He's got a tremendous soft spot. So therefore, he doesn't want to see any of his creatures suffering. So he looks down and says, okay, is this guy God's greatest creation? Is he doing what he's supposed to do? What about prayer? How's he deal with his kids? How's he deal with his spouse? He's going to look at this person with a fine tooth comb and he may shred him. Now, you're going to tell me it's not the person's fault. How can it be the person's fault? He's just adding on to his house, not being ostentatious, right? For argument's sake. He's not being ostentatious. So what's the big deal? Big deal is you got to be careful. Because if it brings up any jealousy in any person, the evil eye, this is what it is. This evil eye could kill you. Could absolutely kill you. Could take away your money. Could put you in the hospital. Could do any number of terrible things. Right? So some people say, well, if you don't believe in the evil eye, it doesn't affect you as bad. Okay. Right? But the Talmud also says 99% of people die from it. One way or another. Right? So you say, well, if I don't believe in it or whatever, it's not going to affect me. Okay. Right? But if a person's got to be careful whatever they do. Right? If a person, God forbid, causes pain to a widow, causes pain to a convert, and there are many people that do this because they don't care, they don't think. Convert doesn't have proper parents that educated them right? They don't have people that want to help them, right? In general, it makes what I do kind of look strange. But, in the end, Jews don't want them, non-Jews don't want them. So who's going to fight their battles? God himself. Right? There are, I don't know, 20, 30 more than 30 prohibitions, I think, by making a convert feel bad. So you're going to say, wow, I know a lot of people that do that. Well, they're in trouble because God himself says, I'm going to fight their battle. Right? Poor people, converts, widows, these people I don't care what they do. You do not want to start up with them. Because if you start up with him, you're starting up with God himself. And I promise you, that's a good thing we're recording this. Doesn't matter how many times we get disconnected. I promise you that if you do that, God is going to zap you. He's going to zap you in 100 different ways. You're going to not even know what hit you upside your head. Yeah, question.
Well, Rabbi, I really have to ask about the because I've experienced everything that you've just said. I mean, life gets buffeted. It's just like, whoa, what am I even doing here? Some days, I say to myself, even just revamping to come back with these broadcasts. I mean, my car suspension, air ride suspension went on me the other week. It'd take 10 days just to get but the point is, whack, whack, whack. Life is weird. I mean, the washing machine breaks down. Lord only knows what else can go wrong. But one thing after another just seemed to be happening. When is this behavior the responsibility of the person looking with the evil eye? When is it a negative? Are there? I've never heard the twist that you're putting on it in the sense that that goes up to Hashem. Hashem, seems to connect with the person and their feelings. But if a person, when is a person's wantonness? Because I love the way, King David in Psalms said, Hashem was his shepherd, he shall not want or be in lack. And the point is, how many people stare at the world in lack and want? And I get the nurturing need of a baby chick that's squawking for food. I get that. But when is there malevolence? On the behalf of somebody who's peering with the evil eye? They're always gawking at somebody wanting something that someone else has, and I know that that's all intertwined in the commandments.
So in the end, if someone's gawking because they gawk, right? That's not something I necessarily have to worry about. In other words, if they're lacking, that's their issue with God. It's not my issue. In other words, if they invented the small, wooden umbrellas you put in cocktail drinks, God can say, okay, go ahead, do it. You're going to make a mint. You want to invent the pet rock, you make a mint, right? Or not. but that's because God wills it. If he wills it, he wants you to be successful, you will be. If not, what are you going to do? You'll say, I'll blame him, or I'll blame someone else. Now, if there is reality to what the person says, that's one thing, that God's going to check it out. If it's not in the realm of reality, God moves on. In other words, this person built out his house. He built out his house. He's not doing it to be ostentatious. He needs more room, right? Let's say he needs more room. He wants to, invite other people over. He wants to have, more guests.
New baby coming, whatever, yeah.
Have more guests, help more needy people. That's an altruistic thing. If he's building it because he just wants to have a bigger place, and he already has a big place, he doesn't need it, that could bring the ire of people, right? That certainly could bring the ire of people. Now, do I have to worry about every schnook, every Tom, Dick, and Harry's gonna, walk by or see what you do? I don't necessarily have to worry about that, right? But if you have more responsibility, if a person helps a lot of people, you have more responsibility, then you have to be that much more careful, right? I once asked somebody that, normally if a person wants to add, let's say they want to add a porch or add to their porch or whatever, you have to go to the municipality. You have to get permission. Right now, going to the municipality takes a long time, costs a lot of money. So what do people do? They built illegally. Right? In other words, they let a proper person build it, but they just didn't go through all the headache, let's say. So what happens? People squeal on them. People squeal to the authorities by telling them this person's building without permission. So they're building without permission. If they build so what do? They squeal to the authorities. The authorities then come down, check it out. That's a Torah prohibition. That's called being a moser. You're giving, unless they're causing damage or something, you're not allowed just to go to the authorities for no reason. So what does the person do? They tattletale to the municipality to say they didn't pay. They didn't get permission. So someone who's a moser, that's what you call them. Someone's a moser who gives someone else over to the non-Jewish authorities or even Jewish authorities. It doesn't really matter. Secular Jewish authorities. What's the punishment? Ein lo chelek le'olam haba. They lose their portion of the world to come. So I asked somebody that, people who squealed on others, they lose their portion of the world to come. So how do they justify that? How in the world do they justify squealing on someone else? So he answered me, he said it's very simple. He said, if I can't build, for whatever reason, I don't have money, I don't have space, whatever it is, I cannot build, I'm going to let you build. I'm going to let you, go around, the municipality to build. No, that I'm not going to do. That's called like being a miser. But at the end of the day, you lose your portion of the world to come. So when it comes to money, in general, people are not necessarily rational. It's a good way, the Talmud says, it's a good way to test a person. Kaso, kiso, and koso. Kaso means how he gets angry. You can see how a person gets angry. Kiso means his pocket. Koso means how he drinks. In other words, if he drinks, you see what comes out of their mouth. Right? You can test the person that way. But you can test the person by their pocket. How they act in business. And unfortunately, you know this, I know this, many others know this. There are a lot of unscrupulous people in business. I'm not saying everybody. There are a lot of unscrupulous people. They'll rip people off and they don't care. They'll scam people, and in the end, it doesn't really matter. Right? They're not interested one way or the other. They're interested in making money. Right? So people like that, they'll give, if they're Jews, they'll give us a bad name. Right? No question. But there are a lot of crooks. There are a lot of crooks. So why do they do it? It's very simple. Make more money. Scam off more people. Give away, say something is what it is not. Right? In other words, there was someone came to a great rabbi, the last generation, and told him, he says, I have a certain quality of material I want to sell. I have grade A, grade B, and grade C. Right? So he says, I want to sell it as grade A. So this rabbi looked at him and said, I don't understand the question. So he said, okay. He said, it's slower. So the rabbi stopped him. He goes, I understood the question. First of all, I'm not deaf. He said, I understood the question. He said, because a friend of mine heard this. He was there. He heard it. So he told me the story. So what happened? So the rabbi said, I understand. It's stealing. How are you allowed to steal? Right? You can't say it's grade A because it's not. It's a mixture, grade B and C. Right? Or in my language, grade F. Right? How can you sell it? It's grade A. Right? So what did he say? And this is obviously the wrong thing to say. This is a religious Jew. I don't know how religious he was, but quote unquote a religious Jew. And he says, Rabbi, that's business. You can't make that up. So, when it comes to business ethics, just as while we're totally off topic here, when it comes to business ethics, in general, most things are Torah prohibitions. You have to pay your workers on time, can't misrepresent. These are all Torah prohibitions. Everyone goes to learn the laws of Shabbos. Laws of Shabbos come up every week. Very good. Right? You have to know what to do on Shabbos, on a festival, etc. Most of the laws are rabbinical. I'm not saying you don't have to know them. How many people in business learn business laws according to the Torah? They should. They're Torah prohibitions. And not only that, but if you're a Jew and you look like a Jew and you're out there swindling people.
Yeah.
Now I heard when I was involved in real estate, there were people in real estate says don't say where you're from, because if you say where you're from, no one will do business with you. Because people are scoundrels. They give people a bad name. Not only that, but that's a desecration of God's name. Now, desecration of God's name has a specific ramifications, right? It has to be done in front of 10 Jews, whatever. People throw this term around a lot, but essentially, you're a disgrace. You're a disgrace to God. Who says you're a religious Jew in the first place, right? But if you're going to do something, I always say, if you're going to do it, you do it right. If you're not going to do it, don't bother. But if you're going to be in business, for goodness sakes, you want to have a good reputation, I would think. Otherwise, people are not going to do business. Why should they do business with you if they know that you're going to steal? So when it comes to charity in general, you got to give to the right, you got to give to the right people. Person can give, millions of dollars to save the whales. You can give to other things, but what happened to your own group? What happened to your own people? What happened to supporting schools and widows and orphans, and needy brides, and all this? Again, to raise $100 million is not a small thing, by any stretch. But imagine the person gets upstairs, even by the eulogy, the soul is there. The soul hears the eulogy. That soul is being crushed because they're being praised. Look at all the charity. Look at all this. And now they know what absolute truth is. Now they see what absolute truth is. By saying absolute truth, they're saying you're taking a knife and digging it into my eyes, into my heart. You're ripping me to shreds because I don't have anything to answer. Because you're going to say, wow, they weren't given the tools. They didn't understand. They didn't know. God's going to cut them a certain level of slack. Right? As I always say, if a Jew grew up, as a potato farmer in Idaho, right? No offense, anyone who's a potato farmer grew up in Idaho. Or in your language, they grew up in the prairies. They grew up in the prairies, watching CFL, nothing worse than that. They grew up in the prairies. They didn't know anything. They're going to pay the price. They're just not going to pay a price as if they knew what they were doing. If they could have found out, they said, I don't want to find out. That's one thing. If they couldn't have found out, or they're just based on desire, which is most people, okay? Right? If it's just based on desire, God's going to cut them, it's going to cut them some slack, but it's not going to be, you're not going to get free lunch over here. So if a person gives charity, properly, then people will respect them more. Oh, so what you thought, back to what you said, about the evil eye, and all that. There are people out there I don't have to worry about. There are people out there that just have it out for everybody. If you're too successful, you're not successful. They'll say, you're bad doing this, you're bad doing that. I don't have to worry necessarily about that. What I have to be careful of is that whatever I do, whatever action I do, it should not in any way, however I do it, should not bring the ire of anybody, should not offend should not offend anyone, right? A person drives, don't drive like a maniac, drive like you should. You're waiting in line in the store, don't cut in front of somebody. Someone asks you a question, answer them, right? In other words, there's common sense. I made a video, you probably didn't see it. It wasn't a video, sorry, it was a question answer session. And I'll get to your question in a second. I don't want to get into politics, which I never do, but I want to mention one thing. Little that I heard, about this, the debate of all debates. So I asked the question about common sense, right? Kind of like, I saw someone post, it was like two people fighting over who's going to watch Peppa Pig or the Mickey Mouse Club, or something like that. But doesn't the Torah tell me? We're going to read in a few weeks. We're going to get back to the book of Genesis. What are we going to read? God created man, right? It says, B'Tselem Elokim, God created man in the image of God. God says, let us make man in our image. Who's he speaking to? What is let us? Who's we? Right? If we're the Beatles, one and one and one, right? No, God is one. God is one. If God is one, who's we?
Everybody.
The heavenly court. He's talking the heavenly court. Should I create man? Shouldn't I create man? It's Rashi says, showing his humility. Does God need to contact the heavenly court when he does something? No. Right? But he's showing humility. Now, people can make mistakes. They can say, oh, it's more than one God. Right? Isn't there more than one God? Let us make God in our image. There's more than one God. So why do we put it like that? So people can make mistakes. If someone wants to say there's more than one God, that's his choice. He can actually do that. God's not going to stop him. But what's the point? Right, don't get lost in my parable here. What's the point? God breathed into the spirit, into a person, the spirit of life. Comes along the Aramaic translation. Aramaic translation says, gave man a ruach memalalo, the ability to speak. Well, don't animals speak? Right? If I was Dr. Doodle and I could speak with the animals, which rabbis of, way back when, understood the language of the birds, some of them, etc. We don't understand what they say. Right? But they also speak. But animals are programmed DNA. So it doesn't necessarily mean to speak. What does it mean? It means to reason. Right? To make decisions. Now you're going to tell me, well, animals can also make decisions. Right? If they want to eat, they'll eat. If they don't want to eat, whatever, right. But they're not creating God's image. It's one aspect of the soul, what we call the nefesh behemoth. It's the animalistic side. They're programmed DNA. Now, if they're programmed DNA, fine. What they say, what they eat, what they do, okay, it doesn't really matter. But if we're humans, and I just got this question earlier, if we're humans, don't you think we should show respect one to another? We shouldn't be putting people down. Right now, in the laws of Lashon Hara I mentioned many times, doesn't apply to non-Jews. Why? Because there are certain things that don't make sense. In other words, for a non-Jew to keep the Noahide laws, it has to be something that makes logical sense, according to the Torah. Now, if I have to tell everybody, listen, Trump said against Biden, he said, I've done more than 47 months, you've done in 47 years. Now, let's say, for argument's sake, what he's saying is true. Right? I'm not backing either one, I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying that's what he said. Now, let's say what he said is true. Am I allowed? I just repeated it. So you can say, why are you allowed to repeat it? Everybody knows it's true. Anyone who heard the debate or saw any clips that people put up, know he said that. Clear as day, he said that. So if I go and repeat it for no reason, says the Chaim in the laws of Shmiras HaLashon, guarding your tongue, not allowed to repeat it. Even though it's true. And 1 second, everybody knows it. Everybody heard it. It was the shock heard around the world. Right? That's what he said. That's exactly what he said. You want to think he's an idiot, he's a moron, he's this. I don't care. That's what he said. So if that's what he said, and now I want to go and repeat it, I'm only allowed to repeat it under certain circumstances. So you're going to say, good, you just transgressed the laws of Lashon Hara. I got a point to make. What's the point? Even if what he said is true, right? Even what he said is true, I'm not allowed to repeat it for no reason, right? But the point is, both of them are at each other's throats. Why don't you just shut up? Why don't you? It's like a slugfest without being in a UFC ring. That's what it was like, right? It's gonna change anyone's opinion how they vote. I don't think so. Regardless. So I asked the question. This is how I really started off my Q&A. I asked the question: how can it be these two people are creating God's image? Doesn't everybody know at some level you're in front of 800 million people? I don't know, 200 million people watching this thing. You don't know putting someone down in front of everybody? You don't know that's forbidden? Now, you might say for a non-Jew, it doesn't apply. Let them say whatever they want. They want to make fun. They want to embarrass him. Let's say he wants to embarrass him. I brought down last week also, because I'm sure you didn't see it, in my Q&A, and that is embarrassing someone is worse than murder. Yeah. Why is it worse than murder? It's an offshoot of murder. Why? Because when you embarrass someone in public, they turn white. Talmud says then they turn red. So what happens? So Rabbeinu Yonah in the Gates of Repentance, Rabbeinu Yonah says that he was talking about severity of punishment. Severity of punishment a person can get. So he was at I think the 10th level. And he was talking about mitzvahs you have to give up your life for rather than transgress. Right? Sorry, transgressions you have to give up your life for rather than transgress. So I give this class once a week to myself. I kind of enjoy it. I put it on my subscription website. Anybody, it's a plug for my subscription website. Anyone, is interested, I can tell them more about it. Maybe we'll do that at the end. Give myself a plug here. And Rabbeinu Yonah says there are 3 mitzvahs. Anytime, any place, I have to give up my life for. One of them is murder. One of them is idolatry. One of them is immorality. So we'll talk about murder. Jew or non-Jew puts a gun to your head and says, I want you to murder this guy, I'm going to kill you. Not allowed to murder. Not allowed to murder. Right? Anytime, any place. So murder is something you have to give up your life for. Now, according to Rabbeinu Yonah, now someone pointed out to me the Rambam does not hold this, but according to Rabbeinu Yonah says, if you embarrass somebody, you lose your portion of the world to come. Where does Rabbeinu Yonah know that from? Rabbeinu Yonah knows, and it's an offshoot of murder. Remember, it's an offshoot of murder. It's not murder itself. Right? So I'll get to the punchline in a second. So where does Rabbeinu Yonah learn it out from? Tamar and Yehuda. Right? Yehuda's with Tamar, his daughter-in-law, and she's about to get killed, to get burnt. And before she gets burned, she says, whoever these things belong to, he's the one that did this. Right? Who was that? That was none other than Yehuda. Right? He's the one that did it. Now, why didn't she say Yehuda did it? She doesn't say Yehuda did it because she didn't want to embarrass him. So therefore, the Talmud learns out, better to jump in a fiery furnace than to embarrass someone in public. Wow. So we learn out about embarrassing someone in public from Tamar and Yehuda. Good. Comes on Rabbeinu Yonah, and this is the punchline. Comes on Rabbeinu Yonah and says, we're talking about things you have to give up your life for. Right? Over here, you lose your portion of the world to come. If you embarrass someone in public, what's the punchline? He doesn't say that by murder itself. By murder itself, it's one of the big 3. You have to give up your life rather than do it to somebody else. And if you do it, you don't lose your portion of the world to come. According to Rabbeinu Yonah. According to the Rambam, if you murder someone, you lose your portion of the world to come. Right? That's without repentance. But I was going according to Rabbeinu Yonah over here. So Rabbeinu Yonah says an unbelievable thing. That's why I started, that's why I mentioned it. I started off the Q&A with this. And that is that if murder itself is one of the big 3, you have to give up your life for anytime, any place. An offshoot of murder. Right? An offshoot of murder, I would say, you don't have to give up your life for. It's an offshoot. If someone says embarrass him in public or you're going to die, I can embarrass him. That's not something I have to give up my life for, in general. If it's something where they're trying to uproot your religion, that's a different story. But in a general case, I don't have to give up my life. I don't have to give up my life. But says Rabbeinu Yonah, you lose your portion of the world to come. He doesn't say it about murder itself. Come on, scratch your head. Right? That's an unbelievable thing. Right? That's an unbelievable thing. How can you lose your portion of the world to come by embarrassing someone? That's not murder. It's not real murder. Real murder is I take a gun, I shoot someone. Real murder is I pull the plug on someone. I throw him off a cliff, whatever. Here I embarrass someone. Okay, it's similar. I get it's similar, but you're not going to tell me it's murder. It's not direct murder by any stretch. So Rabbi Yonah says even the thing that's an offshoot is even worse than the thing itself. And how do I see it's worse than the thing itself? According to Rabbi Yonah, you don't lose your portion of the world to come if you murder someone. Right? Obviously, if you repent, properly, you won't lose your portion. But I'm saying in general. So when I saw this, and I was, after I gave this class to myself, and I really enjoyed it, thought it was really good, and I said, "Wow, this is a great starting point. This is a great starting point for my Q&A." So when I started, I said, "You have to hear this because it's something that just mind-boggling, right?" And that's what it is. So I want to get back to something you mentioned because I sort of got off topic.
I still wanted to ask another question too.
All right, so go ahead. Ask the other question. I'll get to the first one afterwards. Yeah, go ahead.
It all ties in, Rabbi. I mean, because you just going back a little bit, you talked about not doing anything that offends someone.
Right.
And I've got to be honest. Any Orthodox Jewish people I've ever known or been around, I mean, they're very holy people, and you can tell they conduct themselves in a manner that is very upright and pleasant. And but in this day,
if you're still talking to me, that's a good sign.
Well, okay. In this day and age,
yeah,
we live around a lot of people that are offended at everything, especially here in the West. It's getting worse, Rabbi. It's getting worse.
Right.
And these people walk around and use offense like a shield or and you can't get near them. You can't be honest. You can't have any integrity. They're offended at your integrity. They're offended at this. They're offended at that. And how do you cope with people that are endlessly offended and they use their offense?
I'm not going to say I have a good answer, but it's not something. If someone's going to get offended, or they're
we call them snowflakes. There's some around here.
Or they're very sensitive.
They're walking wounds.
So if they're sensitive, so you have to be careful, right? But in the end, it could be no matter what you say or do, they will be offended what you say, right? So
am I going to lose my portion in the world to come because somebody's a walking wound?
I mean, that's something else. That's like I had somebody. I'll just give an example. I had somebody say, I think when I was first engaged, I was first married, they said they were offended the way I dressed. I was like, what's the matter with the way I dress? I said, the only difference between the way I dress, I always wear a white shirt. And I either have, black suit, blue suit, with or without, pinstripes. I wear a black hat and a yarmulke, like in tzitzis. So I said, I don't dress that much different, but what they offended about, what you represent. Because basically they'll say, oh, you look down upon me. I don't look down upon anybody. Right? Who am I? Who am I to look down upon anyone? If you don't uphold what the Torah says, right? Like we just read in Ecclesiastes today, right? We read Ecclesiastes during Sukkot on Shabbos. And Ecclesiastes, son of King David, King Solomon himself, the wisest of all men, he says it's a time to love, a time to hate. But the Torah says you're not allowed to hate a fellow Jew in your heart. Good, I can hate what they do. Right? King David himself says, I love those that love you. I'll fight against those that hate you.
Yes.
So, does that mean I have to be open-minded until my brains fall on the floor? Because you're offended? What do I care you're offended? I think the Torah's against shrimp and pig. And that's offensive. That's not my problem. If they want to understand or try and understand why the Torah says that's one thing. But if they want to make statements about things that are obviously fact, and that they don't hold by it, why do I have to worry about it? In other words, they say, Judaism is so much against women. Really? You really believe that to be true 100%? And you're a sexist, and you're a fanatic, and okay, who gave the first marriage document in the world? Out of anyone in the world. Jews did. It's called the Ketubah. Right? Jews looked out for the rights of women. You tell me a woman can't lead a service? Woman can't do other things. Okay, those are technical issues, right? Doesn't matter. That's not the argument, right? So you're gonna say, well, they're an ultra feminist. So whatever you say, unless they're somewhat open-minded, which none of them ever are, but unless they're somewhat open-minded, okay, you can have a discussion. Now I have to worry that whenever I'm going to answer and defend the Torah, they're going to get offended. I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, don't do eggshells well.
And if they have an issue with it, that's not my problem. In other words, they can say the Torah is anti-women. They can say the Torah is anti-pig. They say, the Torah is anti all kinds of things. It could be the Torah has an image problem, maybe. Right? That means they just don't understand what the Torah is. So if they don't understand the Torah is, and this is something, I have a very difficult time with, and that is people will throw things out, they'll say things, they don't have any idea what they're talking about. Not only that, they'll throw rabbis, myself included, totally under the bus, and say, come on, you really believe that? You're just one of them, you're just, blind faith, this and that. So let me ask you, can you read Hebrew? No. Do you understand Aramaic? No. Have you ever read the Bible from cover to cover? No. You read an article in Wikipedia. That's good. So what are you arguing? You argue with someone that's got a PhD? Never. Unless you have ultimate chutzpah. You're not gonna read an article in Wikipedia and say, "Oh, Stephen Hawking, it's over. You're toast." Einstein, theory of relativity. Are you kidding me? Nobody's gonna do that. Comes to Judaism, no, it's about faith. No, it's about, you don't understand anything. I live in the modern world. I'm live on a computer. I don't live in the modern world. You live in a cult. You know what a cult is? Someone holding a gun to my head to live in my community? No. They may put a gun to my head to leave. That's something else. But no one's putting a gun to my head to say if I don't do this, whatever. I have free choice. Maybe limited, but I have free choice. I can make whatever decision I want. No question about it. So a person has to be sensitive. You have to be sensitive to other people. But, I will say, and I'll get in trouble for saying this, but, it doesn't really matter. And the idea is that there are a lot of leftists out there who do not want to hear a word you have to say. In other words, they'll claim to be open-minded, they'll say all kinds of things, but you don't have a right to your opinion. So if you want to argue, you want to debate, okay? So let's look at the facts. Let's see, is there a God? Can I prove there's a God? Can I prove that the Torah is true? Watch my last 5 videos on Tanakh Talk about proof of God, proof that the Torah is true. Let's have a discussion. No, you're a fanatic. And people like you are spreading the disease. So what are you arguing about? Can you have a normal argument with somebody like that? No. Do I have to worry? They're going to say, oh, you just put women down. Oh, you just do this. God's going to open my file because of that? No. He's not going to do that because these people are maniacs. These people are out of their minds. Right? Most things that people believe, they have not researched. If you've researched it, then I'm not talking about you. Most people don't know anything. I'm talking about Jews. Jews, many Jews, millions of Jews don't know anything. They're going to sit there and argue? They're going to sit there and argue with something they don't know anything about? They're just going to read what it says on, on Facebook, where people put up. People put up, articles against the Torah and other things. It's going to, most people don't even do that. They have certain things they believe, and that's it. Why do they believe it? Who knows? So they're going to get offended by what I say. They'll get offended no matter what I say. Doesn't matter if I yell, I scream, I don't. If I say the Torah is true or whatever, they're going to say, oh, yeah, that's your opinion. You're right, that's my opinion, but it goes back 3,000 years, and I got proof. And I got a lot of proof. You want to hear the proof? No. Oh, I thought you were open-minded. I thought you were a big person, 200 IQ. So what have to be open-minded? I have to worry they're going to get offended? Oh, you don't recognize my kids as being Jewish. Again, it's the Torah. If your mother's not Jewish, you're not Jewish. And if you can't prove they're Jewish, you have to convert. Right? But they're going to say, oh, the Torah this. Okay, let's analyze. Let's see what it is. So I don't have to worry about any, I deal with a lot of crackpots also, but, I don't have to worry about, crackpots out there that, no offense to anyone out there, that, they can have strong opinions. I'm not saying people can have strong opinions. What are they based on? Are they based on reality? Are they based on research? And over the last 20 years, they're not based on research. The vast majority of people, secular people I've come in contact with, they've read newspaper articles. They've read articles on the internet. Have they ever learned themselves? Never. Never, because it doesn't fit their world outlook. So do I have to worry about all these people who doesn't fit their world outlook? I'm going to go to hell. What do I care? I'm not wasting any time. Certainly not going to waste any sleep over that because someone, some poor person may get offended. So So what would we say in Boston? We'd say, suck it up. It's okay. So have a little bit of, have a little bit of backbone. Prove me wrong. That's what I would say. You have issues and you're offended because you think Judaism is against women, and Judaism isn't feministic. Okay. So let's have a discussion. Let's see what Judaism says. Let's argue the point. But you don't want to argue the point because you think you're right, you think I'm wrong. So that's not about debate, right? So So my answer is I don't have to worry what crackpots or other people are going to say if they don't have the requisite knowledge. You want to show me a medrash I've never seen? Okay. You want to catch me in Tanakh? You catch me in Tanakh. I'm not a world expert in Tanakh, no question, right? But in the end, do the work. Put in the effort. If you're not going to put in the effort, you don't have anything to say. You can say, oh, you're disrespecting me. 25 years knowledge, gone through most of the time with most of other things. Show me information. Show me knowledge. If you can't show me just because you made it up or it doesn't fit your world outlook, that's not an argument. The argument is the Torah true or it's not? If it's true, what are my obligations? If it's not true, prove it. Because there are 80,000 other religions out there. There are a lot of flaws in all of them. Christianity, Islam, Zoroastrianism, there are plenty of flaws. You find one flaw in the Torah doesn't exist. I don't have to keep it. All right, that's clear. So you want to say, oh, but I want to pick and choose. I think it's by man. Prove it. I'm sick and tired of hearing people saying things. Prove it. Show me statistics. Show me verses. Show me Tanakh. Show me something. Show me something that proves that the Torah is wrong. If you can't do that, which most people can't, but if you can't do that, so then you have to say, okay, then I have to see if the Torah itself is true and what my obligations are, right? But you have to do the research. I love people who say, just while we're on this topic, I love people who say I'm an agnostic. Someone who's agnostic says, I have a doubt. I have a doubt in God's existence, right? I have a doubt in these other things. Okay, so what have you done? What have you done recently to try and clarify those doubts?
Right, exactly.
So a person's not going to say, a lot of people are not going to say, I'm an atheist. They don't want to go that far. They want to say they believe in God to a certain extent, right? What will they say? They say, why the Holocaust? They'll say, why bad things happen to good people, right? They'll come up with all kinds of things. Okay, it's a great book. It's called Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust. You want to read it? No. Just the question I ask rabbis make them fidget. Okay, so you're not that open-minded, right? You're totally not open-minded. So the question is, am I looking for answers? Now I guarantee there are a lot of people out there claim to be agnostic for years. Let's say I'll give a round number, 10 years. In 10 years, have you ever thought for more than 5 seconds about clarifying that issue? Never. Never. Right? If someone has, I'm not talking about you. The vast majority of people, they don't have time for it. They're too busy watching ball games, doing other things. They're not interested in an answer because if they find out what they think isn't true and they have to change, it's never going to happen. And I had someone tell me this many years ago.
Obligation.
They said if I look into Judaism and I find out it's true and I have to change, I'm not going to do it. They were honest. So I want to get back to the first question. The first question about what we do and bringing about God's ire, so to speak, and about our actions. The person, as I was going to speak about before, or get into it at some point, so now is a good time to get into it. The Ramchal in Derech Hashem, I always quote him a lot. In the way of God, he speaks about why God created the world, purpose of man, purpose of our actions, spiritual forces, reincarnation. Yes, it is a Jewish concept, even though most people think it's not. Regardless, what the world was like before Adam and Eve sinned, what's the story with the nations, whatever, a lot of good things. So at the end of the book, he speaks about actions. He speaks about doing mitzvahs. And what's the purpose of doing mitzvahs for a Jew? It's also for a non-Jew. It's not exactly the same, but similar. And that is the purpose of what we do. What our obligation is to serve God properly. That's our purpose. In other words, we have an obligation to serve God. And what we do either draws us close to him or draws us further away. Right? So the mitzvahs that we do draw ourselves closer. We go after desire, after our bodies, whatever, it draws us further away. So now the million-dollar question is, what does what I do only affect me? Now the answer is, the Ramchal says it doesn't just affect you, it affects the world. In other words, you fix up the world. That's what the Reform movement says, tikkun ha'olam. Right? I mean, it is a real thing. It's about fixing up the world, not the way they think. Right? But fixing up the world meaning I'm bringing God back to this world. I'm bringing the world back to where it was before Adam and Eve sinned. Right? That's what I'm trying to do. Now, still got a long way to go. No question. But so what's the purpose of my actions? The purpose of my actions are, not only does it affect me, not only does it have an effect on me, it has an effect on the whole world. If I make a blessing on an apple, and I make the right blessing, Bray Priya 8, it grew from a tree. According to Kabbalah, it gives special influence to all fruit-bearing trees. Right? It also has special influence in the spiritual world. So what I do matters in a physical way. What I do matters in a spiritual way. So they're going to say, how does it affect me in a spiritual way? So I'll give you an example. A Jew is with somebody, right, intimately they're not allowed to be with. Right? Whether the person's married, let's say not married, whatever the case is, they have a child. What is that child called? That child is called a mamzer. Right? People call it a bastard child, whatever, he's called a mamzer. Now, who can a mamzer marry? A mamzer is only allowed to marry someone of the same union or a convert. So people jump up and down, what? I can only marry, you can only marry a convert? What am I, a second-class citizen? So let's understand. This Jewish child, right, grows up. What's his status? His status is his soul is blemished. Why is his soul blemished? Not his fault. His soul is blemished one very simple reason. Because he's part of a union that never should have been. That's why he's blemished. Now, so you're going to say, what, a convert's second-class citizen? No, convert's a Jew, just like anyone else. There's one major difference. What's the major difference? The major difference is, who is this convert's parents? They were non-Jews, right? They don't have the pedigree. They weren't at Mount Sinai. Unless they want to convert, and they convert. But even so, they weren't at Mount Sinai, they're on a lower level. Right? They don't have the same soul makeup. If that's true, right? If that's true, so what do I have? I have a Jew who comes into the covenant. By coming into the covenant, what are they saying? They're saying I'm upgrading my pedigree. This comes along the Ramchal. The Ramchal says a non-Jew wanted to be part of the Jewish people could have been at the same time as Abraham. They could have joined. So the Ramchal says by the generation dispersion, really by the generation dispersion we call the Tower of Babel, any non-Jew could have joined. They could have been part of the Jewish people at that point. That was really the cutoff point. But the Ramchal says God had mercy. He had mercy even coming to Mount Sinai. There was a last chance because God went to all the nations. He said, you want the Torah? They said no. Each nation, the Gemara says, didn't want the Torah. Medrash said the same thing. Comes on the Jewish people. God said, you want the Torah? They said, sure. You want to know what's written in it? They said, Na'aseh v'nishma. They said, we will hear, we will do. We don't care what's written in it. You have you, God, you have a track record. We don't care what's written in it. We will do exactly what you say. Now, a non-Jew says later, generations later, I want part of that covenant. They say, okay, got to convert. They say, why? They said, because your great-great-grandparents rejected it. If they rejected it, you have to go through this process. You could have joined. You chose not to, or they chose not to, and that's it. So, person's going to say it's not fair. It says, okay, whatever it is, that's what you have to do. You want to join? Certain things you have to do. So even if they join, and they get that extra aspect of the soul, right, that non-Jews don't have, if that's true, then they've upgraded their pedigree. Because the Ramchal says clear, they're not on the same level. Right? A non-Jew is not going to have the same level in Olam Haba in the next world as a Jew. Why do we just, you're going to say, what are non-Jews? What do I do to deserve that? Why can't I have the same level? Because you're not doing the same things. You don't have the same obligations. Because essentially what happens is, the Ramchal says, I'll try and, explain it in layman's terms, because it really is Kabbalah. And that is, every action I do, Yeah, every action I do, I make a blessing, a good blessing, a bad blessing, whatever, it goes upstairs. God looks at it, judges it, throws it back in this world in spiritual terms and in physical terms. So basically, the actions that I do have ramifications. This mamzer wasn't his fault. No one says it's his fault. There's a reality. There's a spiritual reality, just like there's a physical reality. If a woman is pregnant and she smokes crack while she's pregnant, what can happen to the kid? The kid could come out deformed, right? That's a reality. That's a genetic reality. Now, is it the kid's fault? It's not the kid's fault. But there are ramifications. There are physical ramifications, spiritual ramifications. Let's take it one step further, right? And this is how bad intermarriage is. A Jew is one half a soul. When he marries, he completes that soul, right? It's like one soul. Now, what happens? I'll make it easy. What happens if he intermarries? If he intermarries, then what happened to his other half? His other half of soul, let's say he never meets. If the other half of the soul goes by the wayside, he was supposed to have all these kids he didn't have. So now it's like the Matrix. God has to figure out where this soul's going to go, where this soul's going to marry, and what's going to end up happening. So comes along Rabbi Kaplan, of blessed memory. Rabbi Kaplan wrote a book called Made in Heaven. This was a book I didn't even get past the introduction when I was engaged. Because Rabbi Kaplan says, this is such an important event. It's such an important thing that, who you marry doesn't just affect you. It affects your kids. It affects your grandkids. It affects further generations. I was like, who, me? I shut the book. So you're going to say, but I don't understand. I don't understand. What does it matter? What does it matter who you marry? These are spiritual ramifications for generations. I'm not even talking about two Jews that are married, right? Let's say two Jews, they marry the wrong person. I'm not even talking about that because the majority of Jews intermarry. There's at least a 60-70% intermarriage rate. Some places it's higher. Right, we'll go back to the Matrix. I mentioned one intermarriage. One intermarriage, half a soul. What happens to that other soul, other half? Who's it going to marry now? So now God has to put it into a formula and who knows what, 10 digits, 20 digits, who's going to marry, who's going to come in contact with. But what about all these kids they were supposed to have? That all changes. The scorecard changes. That's by one. Imagine if it's 7 out of 10. That's the Matrix. Because that's taking every single supercomputer, right? You put them all together, you don't have enough numbers. You don't have enough numbers to the ramifications of that one act, right? Not only that, Jewish people disappear. That's a whole other issue, right? But what our actions get measured, right? This is really the point, right? Which we're going to get to in the next, probably the next millennium, right? Not the next millennium, probably next week. Be as scrupulous in performing a minor mitzvah because you don't know the reward. There are certain things we know are horrendous. Intermarriage, that's the top of the list. Idolatry, that's the top of the list, right? Murder, immorality. Okay, there are other mitzvahs we don't know what the ramifications are. But it doesn't matter. You have to keep them anyway. And if we, imagine if we knew how serious the cost was. We'd only do certain mitzvahs, right? But the idea is the ramifications of what we do, as the Ramchal says clear in the book Derech Hashem and the Way of God. He states clear the ramifications could absolutely be crucial. But the point I wanted to make before I get to your question is it doesn't just affect you, right? That's really the point. Who does it affect? It can affect other people. It can affect future generations. It can affect something that doesn't have an effect right now. It could be later. It could be much later. So what happened, a person can get punished for something he did 10 years ago because now God says, okay, now's the time. Now's the time I'm going to nail him for what he did 10 years ago. We don't know, the book itself gives, some level of understanding how it works. But he says many times, I'm just setting it up. I'm not telling you each individual case or what happens or whatever. This is in general how it works. But there are unbelievable ramifications, spiritual and physical, for what we do. And basically, I've said many times, in giving over these classes, is that what we see, we don't understand.
All right.
We don't understand what goes on in this world at all. And if people think they do, you're fooling yourself. The Talmud says, Tractate Psochim, it says one of the rabbis went up to heaven and they asked him when he came back, he said, what'd you see? He said, I saw an upside down world. What does it mean, an upside down world? He said, the people suffering in this world, they're at the top in the next world. The ones that think are whistling Dixie in this world ain't doing so good, right? So they're not doing so good up there. So what we see is an illusion in many different ways. Bottom line, we have to keep whatever we have to keep. We have to do no matter what God throws at us. No matter how bad it looks or whatever, I have to do what I need to do. But people have small heads, and people think, oh, I saw this, so I understand it. Right? I'll give another example before I get to your question. At the end of Tractate Chulin is a discussion about Elisha ben Abuya. Elisha ben Abuya is known as Acher, the other one. He was a famous Rabbi of Rabbi Meir. Became a heretic. How did he become a heretic? He was on the Sanhedrin. You have to understand, he was on the Sanhedrin. How did he become a heretic? Because he saw a child climbing up a ladder, do the mitzvah of Shuach HaKen to shoo away the mother bird, and he's doing two commands here. One is he's shooing away the mother bird, take the eggs, and the other is he's listening to his father. His father told him, go do the mitzvah. And both mitzvahs, the only two mitzvahs in the Torah that tell me what is the merit of doing the mitzvah, arichas yomim, long life. So what happened? The kid's coming down, he fell and he died. So Elisha ben Abuya says, I don't understand. If the Torah is telling me he gets a long life, so why did he die? Why did the kid die? It basically becomes a heretic. Rabbi Meir, in the end, ends up bringing him into paradise, but he becomes a heretic, right? So the rabbis disagreed with him. The rabbi said you didn't understand the verse. The verse says you're going to get long life. Long life did not mean in this world. They understand is long life meant in the next world, not in this world, because you got two mitzvahs. Two mitzvahs the kid did, or was supposed to do. Right? Shuach HaKen, take away the mother bird, honoring his father. Comes along the Ben Ish Chai. Ben Ish Chai was more than 100 years ago. He was called the Darshan, the one who gave a lot of sermons to people in Baghdad more than 100 years ago, and all these, ethical parts of the Talmud. It's a major commentary where it's Kabbalah or, it's simple explanation. And he says over there, very simple. He says that he didn't fulfill either mitzvah. You're telling me you should get a Arichas Yomim, you should get long life, and even if you're going to tell me it means in the next world, he didn't do the mitzvah. He didn't finish doing the mitzvah of sending away the mother bird, and he didn't fulfill what his father said. So in either case, he didn't fulfill. So what's the question? Right? So what's the question? So Elisha ben Abuya made a vital mistake. He made a vital mistake, and he said, oh, that's God's Torah? That's the merit for keeping the Torah? He says, that's it. And he went off. And Rabbi Meir was able to bring him out, bring him sort of out of nowhere, so to speak, get proper judgment because there was a fire coming out of his grave, the Talmud says, and his mitzvahs were so great, they couldn't bring him, he couldn't go to paradise. Sorry, his mitzvahs were so great, he couldn't go into hell, but his transgressions were so great that he couldn't go into paradise. So there was a fire coming out of his grave. So Rabbi Meir said, when I die, I'm going to bring him up to heaven. So sometime later, he died and the fire stopped. Right? There's the whole thing, how he went off, exactly what happened, not really the scope for now, but the point is that he didn't understand. Mm-hmm. He missed the point in the verse. He didn't understand what the verse said. So instead of, trying to verify whatever, he started reading books on whatever, all kinds of different things. And he ended up becoming a heretic, right? That's what ended up happening because he said the answers can't be in Judaism, and it went very far. So, a person can see something, that was my point, is a person can see something, but not really understand what you're seeing. And this could be punishment for the kid, in a previous life, did something, and now he has to die like that. There could be a number of explanations we're not privy to, right? And people are going to say, oh, that's cruel, and that's this, and that's that. We don't, it's not for us It's not for us to say, right? A person, God forbid that happened to them. What's the blessing they have to make before they bury, whoever it is? They have to make the blessing, Baruch Dayan HaEmet. God is the true judge, because you're acknowledging the fact that he did it. It's a hard thing to do. It's a very, very hard thing to do, but you have to acknowledge where it comes from, and it's not for us to question.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, you had a question.
Well, I think you summarized it right there in the end. I mean, realistically, when I think of Hashem, I think Hashem knows all about all, including each and every variable of all existence over all time, all at once and forever. There's just no, he doesn't think past, he's gone and future's coming. He knows all. He's Hashem. He does not change. But we live in such a world where, we think contingencies. We think if I do this, this is going to happen. If I do that, that's going to happen. And so many people have a terrible habit of overthinking it, okay? And then misunderstanding starts to get in there. Confusion works its way in, hesitation,
well, first,
indecision.
I'll give one example. The story by Eliezer, Abraham's servant, right? He gives a prayer, before he's looking for a wife for Isaac. And he says, if she fulfills this, that, and the other thing, I know she's the right one. Right? So
there's clarity there.
Yeah. So the question is, how can you rely on omens? We don't rely on omens. Right? We don't rely on to say, if a piece of bread fell out of my mouth, bad luck. Broke a mirror, 7 years, bad luck. Right? I mean, could never happen with my beautiful head. But, you break a mirror, a black cat runs in front of you. Bad luck. So everyone asks the question, even before the Torah is given, doesn't really matter. How can you rely on an omen? How can you rely and say, oh, if this happens, that happens, the other thing happens, I'm going to do this, right? And this is the real power. So the answer given is that he didn't rely on it fully. He said this is a sign, but it's not something I'm relying on 100%, right? Because otherwise, if you're relying on 100%, it's an omen. An omen, I'm not allowed to. So you're right. People make calculations. There's a Yiddish expression. We do stuff and God laughs. Yeah, we try and make our, we take our best foot forward and we think, oh, this is going to be and that's going to be, and it ain't. We make all kinds of plans. We plan, God laughs, right? That's the expression. And, that's the reality, because we think, oh, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do that. Other things are going to happen. And what's the reality? That doesn't happen. There's a curve, right? Just like you said, there's a curve. You get thrown a curve, you say, what happened to all my plans? All my plans just went poof. They went
Rabbi,
up. And
I find that when I get those curves, when I get those degrees of resistance in a direction, I find, and I have to reiterate and reweigh, and I take it to Hashem in prayer, and I have to say, am I encompassing or encountering this resistance for a reason that I shouldn't be going in this direction, or am I refining my free will choice, saying, no, I'm going down this road no matter what opposition? And I think that there's a balance with Hashem in the sense that, you own it if you go past a certain point. And I'll tell you
in Duties of the Heart, in the gate of belief in God, he basically says you stick to what you're good at. Yeah. In other words, someone who's good with their hands, in other words, God gives everything to everybody. If a person's not given brain power, he's given brawn. If he's not given brawn, he's not so strong, he's not going to do physical work, right? God will give him brains. He'll give him a way to make money, right? If a person doesn't have brains, most likely they'll be able to do other things, right? That's the miracle. In other words, a person's going to be in one place or the other. Now, the Ramchal, so the Chovos Levovos, Duties of the Heart, he says over there, he says that if a person should stick to what they're good at. Now, if you're living in a time where, let's say, a person has a job, it's not a good paying job. It's never going to be a good paying job. So you realize, you're never going to get up to a certain level. It's okay. You got to figure out other ways to make ends meet. Right? But if a person is doing something and it couldn't go, other people are doing good or whatever. So the Chovos Levovos says you stick to what you're good at. You stick to what you're good at. In other words, you don't go outside what you're good at, but you're going to say, if I stick to what I'm good at, I'm going to starve. Right? Right? Now, so that could be the reality. Now, if that's the case, and let's say you're doing all these things and you're not going to get paid because you know what I'm talking about, right? And you're not necessarily going to get paid, so then you have to do something else. And you have to do things on the side, right? Or you figure out some other way to make money. But, in the end, it doesn't mean you give up what you're good at. Because what's going to happen is if you don't do what you're good at or what you like to do, now not everything you like to do you can make money from. I had somebody contact me about a certain thing, and this person's trying to write ebooks, other things, make people aware of certain things, and trying to make money from it. And I said, I told him to contact someone else. Wasn't necessarily my thing, but in the end, you're not gonna make money from it. It's not gonna happen, right? Not that I see, right? But in general, you have to stick to what you're good at. Sticking to what you're good at does not necessarily mean you'll be successful money-wise, right? There are plenty of people. There are plenty of people out there that are social workers. Social workers don't make a lot of money, but they're very altruistic. They like to help people. Totally necessary. Right? Teachers also, they don't make a ton of money. They get paid like lawyers for what they do. And certainly in the Jewish world, they're losing a lot of women to teach because there's not a lot of money in it.
Well, rabbis should be.
And they're helping support their families or whatever if their husband's learning. So there are a lot of things, there are a lot of things out there that you could be good at it. You could be altruistic, but at the end of the day, I got to buy my lulav and esrog. I got to have food for the holiday. Like, some people do it easier, some people not, right? But there's another aspect. The other aspect is some people are good at things and they have to do something that they don't want to do. It uses their strengths to a certain degree, but they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
They become resentful. They become resentful because they say, why should I have to do this? I'm so good at this. Right. And I had this for a long time. I had a coal up and running, right? My own money, then money was taken away, the whole story. And, it's one thing if a person's not qualified to do something. If you're not qualified, you gave it your best shot. Okay. You go on to other things. If you see success and you taste success, and then it gets taken from you. I can tell you from personal experience, it's a very hard thing to swallow.
Yeah.
Very, very hard thing to swallow. But you can say, okay, maybe, God's saying, I don't want you to do it now. I want you to do other things, right? But if this is what, quote unquote, you may be born and bred to do, nonetheless, you don't have connections, money's not coming in, you got to find something else to do. And a person, even if they're talented, even if they're very talented, they could be resentful. They say, why should I be doing this job just to bring money in? Because you got an obligation. You got an obligation because that's what the Ksuva says. That's what the Jewish marriage document says. You have to support. Doesn't matter you like it, you don't like it. This is what you have to do. But I'm just saying it could gnaw on a person saying, listen, I have all this talent. Right? Again, you have no idea what I'm talking about, right? I have all this talent.
I get you.
I have all this talent. I can't use it. Or I can't use it in the way I want. Right? So it could be in the future, it's going to be something waiting, right? You sort of got to, keep that up and, whatever. But other things, you still have to put food on the table, right? So if a person's doing it to a certain extent and you get enjoyment out of it, okay, that's not the end of the world. If you're totally shut off and you can't do any of that, that's when you start to, you really start to feel it inside. Because you say, listen, I got all this talent, I can't use any of it. Not just part of it.
It's like a prison.
You're right. You feel like you're in prison. You say, this is what God created me for. Right? So I've had people say, this is not your time. Right? This is not what you should be focusing on. But this is what I'm good at. Right? People call me a scam because, you just give these classes, not everyone ends up converting and this, and, whatever. I've had people say, get a real job, do something real. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm good at. I'm not saying it makes all the money in the world. Certainly not. But, in the end, I decided, I was doing something else and I got laid off, so I decided, a few years ago, you know what? I'm going to go through this full strength. I'm going to treat it like, I'm going to treat it like a 9-to-5 job, or let's say a 4 to midnight job, or 4 to 11 job. I'm going to put videos out there. I'm going to do my Q&As, get back on Tanakh Talk. I'm going to do all these other things. Okay, I'll let God worry about the rest, right? But I'm gonna put in what the Avos says. I talked to one great rabbi. He told me, okay, but if money doesn't come in, okay, so you gotta, you pray hard, you work hard, But I'm not, and I told this to my wife. I said, I'm not going outside this unless I absolutely hit rock bottom, and thank God that hasn't been the case, right? Within a month, I replenished, more or less what I was making. Some people flaked out, some not, but it was unbelievable growth spurt in a few months, and over time. So in the end, at the end of the day, I took this Chovos Levavos to heart and said that, this other job I did, I was miserable. Forget about the hours and everything else, just not something I wanted to do. It was just something I felt that I had no choice, and, it came along, and I said, okay, I'm going to do it. And I still had my other classes. I wasn't doing my Q&As. I didn't have my Torah portion week. I didn't have any, other things I was doing. Okay, so at least, I had that. But I said to myself, if you don't have that, if you don't do that, this is what I live for. This is the enjoyment of helping others, giving over to others that, they can learn from my experiences, my bad experiences and bad mistakes or whatever. But the Chovos Levavos says you stick to what you're good at. You don't go against that because you'll end up being miserable. Now, does that mean you're gonna make enough to eat? Not necessarily. There are people that, let's say, they're very artistically inclined, right? But no one's going to tell them to, start making pictures, try and sell them.
Starving artist, yeah.
And make a living. So, okay, keep what you're doing. Do this on the side. Once you build it up, then you quit your other job, and this is what you do, right? Obviously you have to have a business plan. You have to think it out, etc. And you probably have to be a little bit idealistic, but you have to see that it goes. Because if you see it doesn't go, then you're foolish, because it's going to take a while to start. But again, you have to do what's in your heart, right? Are you going to stop doing these 3D things and all that? You're not going to stop doing that, right? 100%. Because if you stop that, it's like cutting off your left hand, right? And nobody wants to say, it's like, hey, I need my left hand, whatever. So no one's going to do that, right? That doesn't make sense to do. But at the same time, not only you want to feel like you're helping people, but this is what you enjoy doing. But enjoying doing doesn't necessarily pay the bills, right? It just, there are people who do all kinds of things that, okay, they're not going to make it a full-time job because it doesn't pay. Now, the hard part is what I mentioned. If a person's seen success, and you're very good at what you do, and you've seen success, it's a hard thing, and I can tell you from personal experience, I struggle with this a lot, a lot, when it happens. Because I said, I don't understand. I'm trying to do the right thing. Yes. I was helping a lot of people. My learning center was a talk of the town. I'm still trying to build one, working on that. It was a talk of the town, etc. And then it just got taken, right underneath me. So if a person's not good at that, okay. I understand, but if a person's tasted success, if even if you've had a little bit of success, you're gonna say, that is part of the struggle. So you're gonna say, okay, I'm gonna do this no matter what. But then the bills start piling up, and you can't pay anything. So how long is a person gonna stick to their ideal before they realize their wife or spouse is gonna throw them off they're gonna throw them out because you're not doing what you need to do, and then they'll say, it doesn't matter what your ideal is. Your ideal can be your ideal. We need to pay bills, and they may not mix, but if somebody's got a passion, I gave a class. Was it the day after Yom Kippur? It was a day after Yom Kippur, and because Yom Kippur was on a Sunday, so it was Monday, Tuesday. So I had a Q&A. So I did a class to myself on the gate to repentance, and then I did my Q&A. So whatever. So one of my kids said, like, how do you have the strength? You fasted all day. You were in synagogue for 13 hours. I was like, don't you know I'm the energizer bunny? Like, where did you get the strength from? So normally, I could fast, no problem. When I was younger, I could do all kinds of things, build my whole sukkah right afterwards. Okay, I'm older, et cetera. You can see by the gray beard, whatever.
Over 50.
Exactly. So, What'd you say, Sonny? So I told one of my kids. I told one of my kids. I said, you know what? I said, yeah. I said, I was in synagogue for 13 hours, fasting, etc. But I said, when you have a passion for something, unless like I'm totally sick, or whatever the case is, that I can't move, I'll cancel something. Otherwise, or unless it's a holiday. But other than that, if a person has a passion and they have a real passion, and this is what they live for, then you'll do whatever it takes, even if you're not feeling as well or whatever. Again, a person has to know their limits, etc. So that's what I told one of my kids. I said, if you have a passion and this is what you live for, then okay, you might be a little bit more tired, whatever. I won't be at maximum speed. I was pretty good though. I had enough liquids. It was fine. I didn't have any. I didn't have any issues. But a person has to have a passion, something, right? Something has to drive a person. You have to live. But at the same time, which is somewhat painful for some people, is whatever that passion is, it doesn't necessarily mean I can make money from it. Now there are people that have made their passions into money.
Oh,
they've been able to do it. They've definitely done it, but that does not happen overnight.
No,
that does not happen overnight.
Sometimes instant successes for a reason.
But again, if a person's had the success, and then for whatever reason you can't do it, it's hard. It's hard because you just got sledgehammered. You just got, someone just took a Louisville Slugger and just went whap, and you're down. And I mean, you're not down for the count, but it's a painful reality. It doesn't happen, so much, in extreme. Some people it does, some people it doesn't, but I would say that whatever a person does, whatever they want to do, it has to be something that obviously you enjoy. Something that you have something you have a passion for. And obviously, if you want to do it, you're going to have to make a plan to show or to see that, that's going to make money. And if a person goes out on their own, right, they, whatever it is, they go out on their own, they have to realize that you have to hustle to get clients. No matter, you have to build it up. That's what you have to do. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's certainly not going to happen overnight. What can happen is that, you build it up over time. You perfect the craft, but you're doing something else. Even if it's something you don't necessarily like, but you know what the end goal is. Right? So whatever I'm in right now doesn't mean I'm going to end up doing this forever. Right? It's temporary. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to ask because they're saying that this is more and more common in this day and age with the internet, with a lot of people doing self-taught learning by self, in the sense that they're getting bored with their scenario or situation far faster than in previous generations, or they come to new jobs that they may be overqualified for, and that it becomes a mundane situation for a paycheck very, very quickly. This goes on a lot. And many employers are really, really concerned that if they're going to hire this employee or that employee, that they can keep them long term, because there's always a lot of money spent in training and doing whatever's involved. So
people are flaky also. Just because they get into something doesn't mean they're going to stick with it. And a lot of people
common amongst young people.
And a person staying long term with one company is very rare. Yeah. Very rare. We'll give a sports analogy, because I know you're a big sports fan. You can probably count on one hand before free agency. Before free agency, how many players stayed on one team? On one team. Not very many. Not very many. Because now you got people who want to be a dream team, right? Two or three other superstars, make a dream team, win some championships. When I was growing up, in the 70s, the 80s, you didn't have that. People, before free agency, people stayed on their teams, or they got traded, whatever. They ended up getting traded, but they didn't take two other people and go and make a team. Nobody did that, right? There is there is no longevity. There is no, there is no, what's the word? I'm not going to say sportsmanship. That's not the word. There's no, a person staying with the team long
Commitment,
term, dedication, whatever. It like doesn't exist. Yeah, they could be there 3 years, 4 years. They could opt out of the contract. Loyalty is the word. Yeah, there's no loyalty. They're loyal to their ego. They're loyal to money.
Loyal to their gain,
and they're loyal to the fact they want to win. And if they're the best person on the team, but they're never going to win, they're great people, never won anything because they were just on, mediocre teams or, whatever the case is. So there's no loyalty, right? Now you can say, okay, there's free agency, the thing has totally changed. But I'm saying even job-wise, you go back 30 years, 20, 30 years, there was more of a loyalty. Today everyone wants to be their own boss. No one wants to be loyal to anybody, right? Not to mention the fact that the world is always changing, so you always have to be, a few steps ahead of the game, right? Regardless of that, you're right. Companies are gonna spend a lot of money, training people, and they want to see people going to be there long term. Is there a guarantee? No guarantee. I know some people stayed at their companies for years, for many, many years. More. I know someone in the same company, I don't know, 20 years, 25 years. That's not common. Not common today. Now, I'm not saying because of the volatility, in different companies and different things. Right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about all things being equal. Person staying with the same company, if there's money there, they get raises, bonuses, whatever. They're happy with what they do. They wouldn't normally leave, right? In general, today's a whole different, ballgame. People think the grass is greener. People think, if I only had this, if I only had that, but again, you have to be multi-versatile over here because things change. Things change, in a rapid way. So you have to, you sort of have to be almost a jack of all trades. To a certain extent, you have to know how to multitask. You have to know how to use different computer programs, other things, whatever it is to survive. And it's a crazy world. It's a crazy world. If usually, a person worked in one job, that's where they stayed. Unless the place went out of business or something, something like that. Today, loyalty doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. One thing I've realized through mistakes, that is whatever I do. I'm going to have people that I want there, or I'm going to do it myself. And that's it. Someone I know runs a yeshiva here where I pray, Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and on Shabbos and the festivals. He's a one-man show. I mean, he's got other people under him that, give class or whatever, but he's a one-man show. And there are other institutions. They have other people working together. I'm not saying people can't work together, necessarily. There are, plenty of people that can, but I've seen more than not. You got to be very careful who, first of all, who you're going to work with, and that's, if you build something, someone else is not going to come and just take it. And I know someone who started something, and I'm not saying necessarily they're getting squeezed out. They're not necessarily getting squeezed out, but they brought in other people doing fundraising, some other things, and they're getting squeezed, and they're the ones like, getting people to come to the school and doing other things. They want to cut part of the salary because they're not only teaching once a week, but they're the ones that started the whole thing. Yeah. And whatever,
well, vision. You got to have direction. I find many employers 100%. In this day and age, Rabbi, many employers, the attitude out there is, unless you can make me millions, what good are you? And they leave the flavor even for their employees in a negative light.
Listen, you got to treat employees well. You got to give benefits. You got to give bonuses. You got to do other things. But at the end of the day, you need people to help you, right? If you want to build something, unless nobody's an island. Like me, you need other people. You need people to do it. You need other people. There are a lot of cogs in the wheel. That someone's going to need. There has to be, there has to be trust. There has to be other things, etc. So, you gotta be careful with that as well, because you don't want to build something up where someone down the line is going to push you out, and you're the one who brought it in, and whatever. That's, like I said, that's something I learned. I learned sort of the hard way, but we learn, we make mistakes, and hopefully we learn from them.
Well, Rabbi, we are thankful. I am thankful that you are doing your passion. You are doing that thing you love to do and share Torah.
Tell that to my trolls. Tell that to all my trolls, Jack.
Yeah, sorry, the trolls don't know any better. They really don't. They're tunnel vision stuck, and they actually enjoy derogatory, maladaptive behavior. They don't even know they're doing it half the time. They think they're defending a just cause. Right. It's like that baby chick wanting a worm, and the reality is they don't even know what they're asking for half the time. Right. And so they just go, squawk, squawk, squawk. They're really not saying anything. And you've calmed me down on a few occasions, but I think you earned the title of checkmate. I mean, let's face it, some people are out there and need to be mixed up with. And shining light of Torah is just not something everybody could do. And us here in the 70 nations, we're kind of lost if the Hebrew people aren't stepping forward and being the people Hashem has called and asked them to be. It makes that big of a difference. And the sheer fact that you're willing to step forward and have a passion and a joy for it. And like you've said today, even if it costs you, you're going to do it because you believe in it and you go full force. We're thankful to Hashem for you. We're thankful to Hashem that you spend the time in prayer and study, and you actually want to do it with people in mind to share Torah. And in this class, the ethics of the fathers.
Even in the prairies, even in Germany, I've got contacts from Papua New Guinea. People all over the world, they believe in something, they have a passion, and they should get the proper information. That's the goal, right? That's what we're here for.
100%. Well, Rabbi, we've gone over a couple hours here today. Do you want to wind it down for today? And are we still on for next week, Hashem willing? Everything's okay?
That sounds like a plan. We got plenty what to say. We only got to we didn't even get through a third or a tenth, actually, of what there's a lot here.
Well, I'm sure you'll have some more beautiful stuff for us next week. Now, folks, I want to hear some feedback from you guys.
Certainly no question, but whatever. There are a lot of good topics brought up tonight, so that's why it doesn't really matter. I mean, I do want to cover a certain amount of ground, but there are a lot of important topics. How to, family, dealing with parents, honoring parents, respect.
Yes.
And we just don't see a lot of that out there, and regardless of who the two presidential candidates are and whatever. I mean, it's, what happened to being created in God's image? What happened to that? It's just, just a slugfest. Doesn't matter who they are, right? But the bottom line is why, that's why I called my Q&A, why don't people have common sense, right? There are things I would think that are obvious. But again, you could say, it's, you're trying to nail the other person, and even if you have to put them down, and different things, why politics is dirty in general. Right, but in the end, we're looking at things the way the Torah looks at it. Yeah. Right, we're it's not like, oh, that's your spin on the Torah. It's not my spin on the Torah. That's what the Torah says. Right, these are the laws of Lashon Hara. So you want to tell me it's a moral imperative by non-Jews, but okay, even if it's a moral imperative, isn't this a little bit much? I mean, they're calling it the worst presidential debate in the history of man. Right, it could very well be. Even so, what happened, this is one of my big things most people know, and this is what ticks me off a lot of times, and that is what happened to integrity. Where is integrity? You can be in politics for years and years, and, you put someone down, you make fun of them, you say things, you do things. You're created b'tselem Elokim. You're created in God's image, so you're allowed to put someone down to make yourself look better so I can get so I can be president. So I can, I can get a better job. I can do other things. The Torah is about integrity. The Torah is about keeping it to the highest level that I can, whether as a Jew or a non-Jew. And if a person starts shooting off their mouth and, and they get angry and they tell someone just to shut up in front of, millions of people, I understand. The person's aggravated and, in different things. So what happened to your Tzelem Elokim? What happened to you being in God's name? He said, well, he provoked me. He got me angry. I care he got you angry. That's what he was trying to do, right? But, don't you have to be the bigger man? Aren't there obligations how I'm supposed to act? There are obligations how I'm supposed to act.
I think
and what I'm supposed to do.
we got to keep President Trump in our prayers. I mean, him and his wife also, contracted coronavirus.
So, even with all that, you have to have common sense. And I was growing up, in a secular high school where I saw all these intelligent people, many more intelligent than me, and acting like animals, getting wasted, doing drugs, other things. And I thought, I would never have any of these people at my house. They're just, scum of the earth, so to speak. And I figured, when I got to university, that'll be better. I got to university, it wasn't much better. Top 1% of college students doing the same things. Like these are going to be the movers and shakers, possibly the next generation. It's a scary thought. So then I said, well, I have to see how the other world lives. That's how I got into, Orthodox Judaism, because I saw what I saw in the conservative movement certainly didn't work. Right? The secular, I wasn't going to be, a secular Jew, at that point, because I was already going in that direction. But it's man's inhumanity to man, right? And you get no better proof than, Mr. Aristotle himself, right? Aristotle himself, known as the great philosopher. Aristotle, also known as the great womanizer, right? And the students caught him, and they said, how could you be doing this? And he said, look, there's Aristotle the philosopher. There's Aristotle, he does other things. In Judaism, we don't say that. We don't believe in that. There's no such thing as compartmentalization. So if we do things wrong, we got to man up to it. We got to say, I've done something wrong. I shouldn't have done it. So how can an Orthodox Jew be, not be truthful in business? There you go. How can he be Orthodox, right? We're our own worst enemy. We have to have integrity. We can't just say, oh, what? I saw, someone sold someone something that wasn't what he said it was. Put it in the wash. This gold trim comes off. And they said, how can you do that? You're an Orthodox Jew. So he said, who told you to put Orthodox Jews on such a high pedestal? That's not good for bringing, Jews closer to Judaism. Right? So you say, what happened to integrity? So you're going to tell me, okay, this person's a swindler. He's a thief. You're right. But he looks like an Orthodox Jew. You're right. How can he be both? He can't. Right? And I always say, if you're going to do it, do it. And do it right. If you're not going to do it, I don't care what you do. Then, if you're not going to do it, fine. But
try.
But you're not going to be two-faced. You're not going to pick and choose. Right? You're going to do what the Torah says. If you're not going to do what the Torah says, fine. Then you can make it up as you go along. I'm not going to have too many issues because, okay, you're calling a spade a spade. You're doing whatever you want. The rabbi's doing whatever they want. No, that's not how oral law works. Right? But in general, to be the man, you have to be the man. You have to do what it says. Right? To the highest level. Doesn't mean we're perfect. Doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. But you have to have integrity. If you don't have integrity, then the Torah is worth nothing. You could learn, the entire Talmud, all the Midrashim, Kabbalah, all these things. If you don't have integrity, you're not nice to your fellow man, what is learning worth? Right? We're going to see that you need Torah with Derech Eretz. What is Torah and Derech Eretz? We're going to see in the next couple Mishnas. Torah and Derech Eretz means, one explanation is, you have to have Torah and you have to work. Because if you don't work, then, if you only have Torah, you're going to waste your time, you do other things, you get into other trouble. Right? So you need a combination. All right, what about people sitting and learning and able to do that? Okay, so we'll get in a whole discussion. We'll get in a whole discussion about that. Right? But when it comes to that, you have to have integrity. And if you don't have integrity, you misrepresent. So you misrepresent what the Torah is. So when people misrepresent what the Torah is, they give people, good people, they give good Jews a bad name. Right? They're going to say, oh, these people, they're infecting other people. They don't wear masks. They don't social distance. Yeah, plenty of other people don't either. I'm not saying what they do is right. I'm not saying what they do is right. And no one had any problem, with all these secular Jews protesting against the prime minister, 10,000 people, no social distancing, no masks, right? They don't have any complaint about that, but we're going to shut down your synagogue. How again? What's the connection? Because you're infecting everybody. What are you talking about? It's going to be a new wave of 10,000 people being in protest. You don't say anything about that, so yeah, that's reverse discrimination. But again, obviously we've done things to deserve it. if we haven't done anything to deserve it, it shouldn't happen. There shouldn't be anti-Semitism. There shouldn't be any of these things, even though it's going to exist till the Messiah comes, right? But we have to be good ambassadors. If we're not good ambassadors, we're put down, we're discriminated against, all kinds of other things, because we're not upholding what the Torah says. Non-Jews have a lot more respect. I would say Jews also, but non-Jews even more. Have a lot more respect for Jews that uphold what they do. They can disagree. They can say, I don't think that's true or whatever. But if they see you're consistent, they see you're honest, they see how you're raising your kids, there's no reason why they shouldn't say, thank God his Rabbi taught him Torah. Thank God his father taught him Torah. That's the Kiddush Hashem. That's the sanctification of God's name. If you're a schnook and you're misleading people, of course they're going to hate you, right? Especially if you get caught, right? So, we definitely need integrity.
Never mind even getting caught. How do you live in your skin?
We're definitely our own worst enemy. We don't have anyone to blame but ourselves. And a person can say, but I'm not like that. I don't do that. But if you mention all these other people that do that, what you're saying is all Jews X, all Orthodox Jews X. What are you saying? You're racist. No, but I didn't mean you. But you just said, when the virus came out, and there was I spoke about this a few times. There was a funeral for one of the great rabbis in New York, and they had agreement with the police. It's the whole thing. They had agreement with the police, and they reneged on it in the end. So if they would have asked me, I would have told them not necessarily to do it because, this whole thing is at the height and what's going on, right, and other things. So anyway, they ended up doing it, and the police got involved, and whatever. It was a terrible thing. It was a terrible media thing. So somebody I spoke to said, well, I hope you're not going to synagogue. I hope you're not doing what these people did. I said, I'm not. I said, everything's shut down anyway. I can't go anywhere, even if I wanted to. But previous to that, I was outside, social distancing, wearing a mask, whatever. I hope you're not doing with that. But they had pictures of people at the beach. Secular people at the beach. They had people, 50 people in a room having some sort of party, doing whatever. They didn't care. So why you're calling my group out. Your group did this. I'm not part of that group. I didn't do it. But see what it does, it's collective. See, when I spoke about that before, it's collective punishment for everybody. And the only reason that makes sense is because the Talmud tells me, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh. All Jews are intertwined. If we didn't have that statement or that wasn't true, it wouldn't make any sense. What do you care what these Jews in Brooklyn are doing? What does that have to do with me? What does that have to do with me? The way I drive, anything. What does that have to do with anything? They're going to say, because these people are causing X. And these people are bad. So when you're saying these people are bad, you're taking them out and you're saying all Orthodox Jews. That's what you're saying. So no, but that's not what I meant. I go, that's exactly what you meant. You're taking them out. If you were to say that about blacks, they'd burn down your house. You say that about Chinese people, you say that about others, that's racism. Why is it racism against Jews? Especially if you're Jewish. Why couldn't I call you a self-hating Jew? I have a right to do that. Why aren't you a self-hating Jew? Because you're calling out your racism against Orthodox Jews. You don't like Orthodox Jews. So you're going to blame them. Look at all these secular people. Look what they did. Why don't you call them out? Okay, what they're doing is wrong also. Oh, why don't you call these people protest? Why don't you call them out? Okay, but who are they going to call out first? Who are they going to call out first? They're going to call out us. Why? Because we did, so somebody did something. Maybe they shouldn't have done it, right? Maybe they shouldn't have done it. Should been a little more sensitive, maybe, right? Whatever the case is, and they ended up doing it. So who does it make look bad? Everybody. Makes everybody look bad. They didn't ask me. They didn't ask my opinion, right? So you're right. It made them look bad, but collectively, when you blame a whole group of people, go look it up in Wikipedia, that is called racism. That's called discrimination, right? And so if you're a Jew, that means you're a self-hating Jew because you hate other types of Jews and you think you're great. And the only answer I could answer, because they weren't going to listen to anything I said anyway, the only thing I answered was, I am not doing that. Many people in my community are not doing that. Some are, okay. Plenty of people not social distancing. What can I do? What can I do? Now the whole country's shut down.
No, we can only do what we can do.
We're going to be for another 6 months. It's going to be shut down different ways.
Oh.
I'm doing what I can do. My family's doing what they can do. You got secular religious not listening to anything, and there's a shutdown, and everyone's acting like it's normal. It's crazy. All the stores are open. It's a crazy thing because they're not really enforcing anything right now. I mean, they say they're going to, whatever, But in the end, you can only do what you can do, right? But there are plenty of people on both sides not doing what they should do. So if they're not doing, I don't care. You hold the mask, you don't hold the mask, whatever the case is, right? This is what the Ministry of Health says you have to do. Right? Otherwise, you're going to get prosecuted, right? If they do that. So if that's the case, why are you going to call out? You're going to call out all these communities. We live in close contact. Most of this is coming from home. One person gets it, everyone gets infected, right? Because, okay, we have a lot of kids. It's not a lot of area where people live. So, okay, it can transfer faster. There's no question. Because you're the ones causing it. There are plenty of people. I have a good friend of mine that he just caught it. His daughter just caught it. They have a relative mild case, but they were very, very stringent, and they still got it. Who knows who they got it from, right? It's a crazy thing. Nobody wants to get it. You take precautions, but what does this show you? God runs the world, right? So you're gonna say, oh look, they went here, they went there. You have no idea. You have no idea. Could it come if you're not social distancing? I was in a synagogue last week. A lot of people not wearing masks. All of a sudden, someone, I was like at least 10, 20 feet away, more than 10 meters away. So it wasn't really an issue. Someone sneezes without a mask. I'm not going to tell you what it looked like. So I'm not going to get gross here.
Everybody's face here.
But in the end, you want to know why people get sick? Why this happens? Because people aren't stringent in hygiene. You're going to tell me, isn't that a Noahide law? The closest thing to godliness is cleanliness. Isn't that a Noahide law? Isn't that something everybody knows? So why don't people shower more than once a week? Why do some people smell? I don't have an answer. I think people are stupid.
Once a week.
I just don't. There are a lot of things I don't get. But in the end, no one's asking my opinion. But there are people that'll complain about the lockdown and this and that. They'll complain. They themselves are not wearing a mask. I'll end with one good story. One very good story. My Rabbi was once, he heard a lecture when he was much younger from a doctor, and he was speaking years ago, probably more than 50 years ago, and he was speaking about how bad smoking is, and what smoking causes. 10 minutes after the lecture, what does he do? Takes out a cigarette. Starts smoking. So I asked him, what's going on? What in the world's going on? How you just said like 50 different reasons where lung disease, this disease, that disease, all these things are going to shorten your life. How can you smoke? He said, I'll tell you the truth. I know how bad it is. He said, but I get such enjoyment from it. Even if it's going to cut off years of my life, I can't give it up. That doesn't make sense. In other words, you have such a strong desire to do something wrong that in the end it's going to kill you or it's going to shorten your life. So that means the desires have killed him. That's what happened to Esav. Esav grew up in the house of Isaac, right? And his head is buried in the cave of the patriarchs because his body didn't deserve to be there because his body destroyed him. He went after his heart. But his mind was just as great as Yaakov. But his heart, his desires destroyed him. So people will say, I'd rather give in to my desires, not lose anything, rather than work on it and give up this benefit. But this benefit's going to kill you. It's like, doesn't matter. I'm enjoying it so much. Even what it's going to do to me, it's going to cut off years from my life, and my kids may suffer, my wife may suffer, whatever it is, I'm not going to give it up because it's too enjoyable. So you're going to say, well, that's an extreme. I don't know if that's an extreme. Because there are a lot of people that do things that are, bad for their health, bad for their body, other things, and they refuse to do anything about it because, unless they absolutely have to, because it's too enjoyable what they do. That was my 35 second and 3 minutes response and countdown.
Well, so I want to comment, but I'm not going to.
I mean, you could. I got time. It's
yeah, I don't have another class today, so I mean, if you want to go a little longer, but when it comes to those things that we know are bad for us, I have to say, what I'm learning from the Hebrew people is it a prohibition. Okay, There's a difference. I find in this day and age, in the world we live in, I grew up in a steel town, okay? And to be honest with you, the air quality advisory, long before they ever existed at our age, but when I was a kid, I mean, the air quality, just some of the hot summer days just wasn't nice. You could, just living there wasn't good for you, period. End of story. But the point of the matter is you couldn't drink water in certain places. It's just not good for you, but the body needs it to survive. So do you drink water that is the only water available, even though it's not good for you, but you need it for survival? And if you start shaving everything to the point where you got to be a neurotic, a natural, tree hugging, grass eater, it's not really living at that point. I get where the rabbi who just had to have that cigarette.
I'll tell you one other quick story. Someone told me a story a number of years ago that there was somebody they knew in their community, macrobiotic, exercised like a fiend, macrobiotic, got cancer in their early 60s and died.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
slam of a heart attack instantly.
Yeah, whatever.
A brain aneurysm.
So I'm not saying you don't have to eat healthy. You don't have to, work the body. There could be people that smoke and live till 95.
I guess my point was, does Torah prohibit it? It doesn't prohibit smoking point blank, does it?
Yes, it does.
It's not.
Yeah, the Torah says you have to guard your body. We know that smoking is bad. We know smoking is bad. There's no question. So, one of the great rabbis of the last generation, Moshe Feinstein, of blessed memory, it talked about smoking, and it was clear that he didn't know the effect. He didn't know the effect of how bad it was because it wasn't around at that time. So
I know doctors
he would have
in the
answered.
50s
He would have answered in a different way, but certainly, anything that's gonna go against the body. It's smoking, drugs. People say what, if a person smokes weed, a few times a week, whatever. We know, it's not necessarily addictive per se, but it kills brain cells. Right? We know it makes a person lazy. Now, it could be, you'll tell me you have to take a lot of it, on a regular basis to get to that level. But people know it's bad, right? People know drugs in general, are certainly bad. So there's an obligation to take care of the body. Now, does that mean I have to be a religious fanatic doing it? I have to work out, 4 times a week and all that? I don't think so. But you have to keep the body, if you keep the body healthy, the soul is healthy. Now, is that a guarantee to long life? I mean, doctors will say you live longer, right? If you eat healthier and you keep everything everything being equal. Okay, but again, a person can do that, work out 3-4 times a day, eat very healthy, this and that. Could get cancer and die at a young age. So, I'm not. The bottom line is you have to put your best foot forward. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? But there is an obligation, 100%, right? 100% take care of the body. So even if you're going to tell me, listen, it's the only water we have, and and it's not as healthy, if you don't drink water, you die, right? You have to have liquid, right? If you don't drink water, you'll dehydrate, and that's it. So even if it's not as healthy, okay, right? But everything we eat at some level is not healthy. People make the mistake and think, oh, kosher means healthy. It doesn't mean healthy. If you see, definitely doesn't mean that. Plenty of things that are kosher are totally unhealthy, but it just it means it's clean. Someone told me that was working, studying, become like in culinary school, and they went to certain pastry places. Like, wow, if this is kosher, it's being run in a terrible way. The FDA should close it down, right? It's not about being clean. It should be, but that's not what it means, right? That's just it's how it's translated. But what essentially you're doing is God saying this is beneficial to you. This is beneficial to your soul. It doesn't affect a non-Jew the way it affects a Jew. So if a Jew eats non-kosher food, right? The Talmud says it makes them what's the word? Dull. It dulls their soul, right? It dulls their soul. It makes them apathetic. That's the word. Makes them apathetic. It's like trying to start a Jeep with a 9-volt, right? Or a Humvee or whatever. So in the end, most people, let's say any Jew that's coming back to Judaism, there are 2 things that it's crucial they should start doing. One is keeping Shabbos, and one is keeping kosher. Because you got to get that garbage out of your system, and then you can hear Torah. But if you're feeding your body with garbage all the time, i.e. non-kosher food, it affects you. right? Even though it has been proven by science. I always say we don't care what science says, but in general, it doesn't really matter, right? Even though science hasn't proven it. The bottom line is it doesn't affect a non-Jew. So a non-Jew wants to keep kosher. They can, right? But it doesn't affect their soul the same way. So one of the commentaries says if it doesn't affect their soul in the same way, so why they do it? A non-Jew is only going to do something that benefits them. That there's a benefit is no, but it's cleaner, it's this, it's that. You don't have the same soul makeup. There's a tremendously strong claim over here, and that is it doesn't affect you. By a Jew, even though they haven't proven it, it does affect us. So if it does, if it makes it apathetic, a non-Jew is not going to do that. Because what's the proof? Because non-Jews eat all kinds of things, right? You go to China or any of these other places, they'll eat anything that moves, right? So, and you see, it doesn't affect them, right? Forget about this bat thing in Wuhan or whatever, right? But you'll see, whatever they eat doesn't affect them, right? It does not, it doesn't kill them. So therefore, it's not about what they eat, right? So for a Jew, it's different, right? Again, regardless whether it's been, regardless of whether it's been proven or not, So yeah, there is a big idea, there is a big idea of keeping the body healthy. Now, why do people don't do it? Because they're lazy. You got to take out time to exercise. That's what keeps the body going, etc. We're lazy.
I find aging's difficult, Rabbi. Aging for me has been starting to get just one of those things,
So I'm telling you from personal experience, I'm also lazy, right? And I got a elliptical machine in my house, and whatever people use it, I got to get on it. I just got to find the time to do it, make a schedule. I'm just I'm like everybody else. I'm just lazy. Definitely. But I also feel it. I also definitely feel it. So, so in the end. You want a strong soul, you got to take care of the body. So, if you eat garbage, it makes you more tired, right? Stuff that's got a lot of sugar and different things, affects in different ways. So, am I going to be macrobiotic? I'm going to be macrobiotic, but I think if I would, I have, more stamina and other things, if definitely if I exercise more or exercise at all, right, in general, but okay, gotta make that, definitely have to make that effort. To do that, because at a certain age you won't be able to do it as much, and it's gonna be worse off. Again, it's a guarantee. It's not a guarantee, but it should be done.
Yeah, without a doubt, we got to look after ourselves, Rabbi. I would love to wind it down at the moment, if that's okay with you. I mean, I want to thank you for today's class. I did learn so much. There was things in there about the way, or especially early, the way the things communicate, or
you got to shut down the motherboard or it's going to overheat.
I need to learn so much. There's so much room for improvement.
We all do. We all do. I'm only trying to state the obvious. What according to the Torah and how to look at it from a Torah lens. And that's what I always say. You got to see what the Torah says, because Torah talks about everything.
It's needed. There's life in there. Rabbi, I want to thank you for today. Now, we've said we're on for next week, but we're aiming for the same time. We start for me, it's 11 a.m. It's 9 p.m. in Israel.
2 o'clock Eastern time.
2 o'clock Eastern. So, Rabbi, till next week.
Only half an hour difference.
Only half an hour difference earlier, because it's permitted. So I'm excited. Yeah. So, folks, we're going to sign out. Till next week, same time, have a wonderful, wonderful week.